So it's 7 o'clock, and so I'm going to call this regular council meeting to order. And I'd like to start by recognizing that we're meeting on the ancestral lands of the Sooke and Pachidat and Chano nations, and that we're happy to be here. And next I'll look for an adoption of minutes. Or sorry, adoption of the agenda, sorry.
Yeah.
Councillor Beddoes, or sorry, Bateman.
Yeah, I'd like to move item 10.5, the Sooke Food Bank, forward to follow item 6, delegations.
Okay, if you want to, anything to?
No, I just think the hardworking staff of the Sooke Food Bank needs to get home to get their rest. So let's bring them up.
Okay. I'm happy to support that. All in favor? Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
And aside from that, approval of the agenda as amended. Okay. All in favor? That's unanimous as well. Okay. Next we have adoption of minutes from special council April 8th, regular council April 8th, committee of the whole April 15th, regular council April 22nd, and special committee of the whole April 29th. Moved by St. Pierre, seconded by Beddoes. All in favor?
I did send through you, Mr. Chair, to our corporate officer. I sent through some revisions or suggested revisions, and they included some rather detailed points around the Ministry of Transportation presentation. And I wonder if they were all okay with you. Are you taking those under consideration, or how will you handle those?
Certainly. My understanding is that staff had updated the minutes with those proposed edits. So the minutes before you do reflect those. And I think there's a broader conversation about minutes that I can certainly have with you, and happy to do that. But I looked over the recommendations you had for the Modi conversation. We certainly added those in.
Okay, all in favor? That's unanimous. On to public and statutory hearings, and we have a development variance permit for 2205 Tara Place. Is there a staff report?
There is, and a presentation. Yeah, so this application is in regard to a development variance permit application at 2205 Terra Place. Oh, it shifted. Whoops. So the subject property is 2,350 square meters. It's zoned R2, medium lot residential. It has a land use designation of community residential. The R2 zone permits single family and duplex dwelling use with a minimum lot size of 600 square meters. Adjacent land uses to this property include medium lot residential R2 in the form of single family dwellings to the north and east, and community facilities in the form of the municipal hall and fire hall to the west and south. The owner of the subject property has an active subdivision application proposing to subdivide the property into 3 lots. This application is requesting a development variance permit to vary section 202.7 of the zoning bylaw to reduce the minimum building setback to the front and rear lot lines from proposed lot 2 and 3 to accommodate future duplex development. Specifically for lot 2, a reduction to the minimum building setback to the front lot line from 4.5 to 2.3 meters and to the rear from 4.5 to 2.4. And for proposed lot 3, a reduction to the minimum building setback to the front lot line from 4.5 meters to 3.2, and to the rear from 4.5 to 2.1. Due to the configuration of proposed lots 2 and 3, they're considered panhandle lots, each with an access strip off Terra Place. The front lot line for the panhandle lot is defined as the lot line adjoining and approximately perpendicular to the access strip, while the front and rear lot lines will essentially function as interior lot lines. A minimum building setback distance of 4.5 meters is required from each lot line. Regarding proposed lot 2, the front lot line is located to the north lot boundary in red, and the rear lot line is located opposite and to the south in green. The proposed variance to section 2.207 of the zoning bylaws have reduced the minimum building setback to the front lot line from 4.5 to 2.3 meters and the rear lot line from 4.5 to 2.4. Regarding proposed lot 3, the front lot line is located along the north boundary in red, and the rear lot line again is located opposite and to the south in green. The proposed variance to section 202.7 of the zoning bylaws reduce the minimum building setback to the front lot line from 4.5 meters to 3.2 and the rear lot line from 4.5 meters to 2.1. A table is provided here to outline the proposed and required building setbacks for the R2 zone. The plan on the left is a preliminary layout indicating the specific locations where the variance is required at both the front and rear lot lines. The plan would be attached to the issued permit subject to council authorization. In accordance with the Local Government Act and the district's development application procedures policy, notices were mailed to adjacent property owners. Now, we have received one submission from the public, noting some concerns with parking, drainage, and safety due to the adjacent slope. Staff can, to address these comments, staff confirm that 2 parking spaces, would be required per unit. In accordance with the zoning bylaw, drainage would also be addressed at time of subdivision through a stormwater management plan, which must maintain pre-development flows on site. And sediment and erosion control measures or fencing requirements would also be evaluated at time of subdivision. So in conclusion, staff recommend that council authorize issuance of the development variance permit to vary the minimum building setbacks to the front and rear lot lines of proposed lots 2 and 3 based on the following rationale. That the variance are required due to the panhandle lot configuration of the proposed subdivision. The lot lines defined as front and rear otherwise function as interior lot lines that would have a less restrictive setback requirement, which the proposal would exceed. And also as a result of the proposed variances, the impacts to surrounding properties are anticipated to be negligible. The draft motion presented here reflects staff recommendation to authorize the issuance of the development variance permit as per attachment 7. This concludes my presentation. The applicant is in attendance and available for questions if council has any. Thank you.
Councillor St. Pierre.
Through the chair to staff. I'm just curious. I have no problems with the recommendation or with the DVP and so on and so forth. I'm curious because we seem to be having occasional panhandle questions. Is this a place that staff is looking at maybe making some amendments to the bylaws so that we don't so that this sort of thing is dealt with automatically? Because obviously there's a small situation where when it's a panhandle, the setbacks don't quite work out.
Mm-hmm. Yes, through the chair, it's certainly something that we could consider. Looking forward to a zoning bylaw update, but currently we don't have any immediate plans to be looking at modifying the definitions of lot lines, for example, for these setback reasons. Thank you.
Councillor Pearson.
Yes, thank you for the presentation and it's a question in general. Later on tonight, we're going to look at delegated authority on minor variances. Will you think this fits into the category of minor variance?
Yeah, through the chair, it certainly would be a consideration. I believe so, but it would be up to the director to determine if it would be required. Also through the notification process, if we did receive a few letters with significant concerns, I'm sure that would dictate the director's decision making in bringing this forward to council or approving it through delegated authority approvals.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Beddoes.
Can I have a clarification on that? Because when we went through that, I thought that any variances to the property lines and things like that did come to council, not delegated to staff. Did I get that wrong?
Through the chair, yes, I believe so. So in this case, it would be eligible certainly for delegated approval. Unless the director felt that it was in the public interest for council to consider the applications.
So when you move a thing a few meters here or there, it's classed as minor, eh?
Correct.
On record, I'm not happy with that, but we'll deal with that. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bateman.
Okay, thank you for the report. Now I note under the current zoning R2, they're allowed a single family dwelling or one duplex per lot. So we are now into this new era of small scale multi-unit. And they can have up to 6 units on a property of this size. Is that correct? No.
Yeah, through the chair, subject to the zoning bylaw being adopted here at the end of June, the government is requiring us, or the province is requiring us to permit up to 4 units. 4 units maximum on lots. So it's pretty much making do of single family only zoning, permitting up to 4 units. Therefore, it's not restricting development of single family or duplex dwellings, but it's permitting up to 4 units.
Okay. And so here with 3 duplexes, we're dealing with mathematically 6 units. Or the 3 each duplex considered 1 unit.
Yeah, the duplex is a type of multifamily structure. And in this case, the 3 lots would each contain 1 single duplex or 2 dwelling units per lot.
Okay. All right, and this zoning bylaw update due on June 30th of this year, will that capture this kind of nuance within these zones? Medium lot residential, for example.
Yeah, so through the chair, we'd be looking at consolidating our single family and duplex zones into a single. Again, that's up to council to determine the best way forward, but staff will likely be recommending something in that regard, yes. And it will apply to properties such as this.
Okay. Now, you noted in your report there was negligible impacts on the community, but we did get a letter today from the near neighbor on the south side. Had you had a chance to look at that? And do you have any thoughts on their main concerns? Safety was number 1, and they would like to see a fence built along that south side property.
Yeah, through the chair, I did address this in one of my slides here, just on the public notification and the feedback we did receive from the adjacent property owner. So staff can confirm that parking will be addressed as per the zoning bylaw. Drainage, which was their concern number 2, would be addressed through the subdivision process and stormwater management plan review. Also, sediment erosion control plan or fencing requirements could also be addressed through the subdivision application portion. If their safety fencing may not be a component of that, but it's certainly something that the 2 property owners may want to discuss privately, but not something that would be considered or a condition of a variance application here today.
Okay, and I guess the final point that was raised in that letter was streetlights. Will there be additional streetlights on the frontage improvements along there?
Yeah, through the chair, perhaps Mr. Carter could speak to this, but as part of subdivision, they would need to improve the road frontage. The frontage standard would include street lighting. It just depend, I guess, if the frontage was a suitable location for street lighting or not.
And of course, there can always be hoods put on these streetlights as well to prevent impacts on residents. Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Beddoes.
Apologies. I'm still hung up on this minor setback. Now, my understanding is because these setbacks are internal, they're not basically affecting the people next door, right? These setbacks that we're dealing with today. They're not the external setbacks, they're internal setbacks. Is that correct?
Through the chair, they're always internal setbacks. I suppose we're not discussing.
Well, I know, but they're not abutting a neighbor's property. They're abutting the 3 properties inside the present development.
It will be a neighboring property. It is considered a neighboring property for our
Winter
purposes.
Bill, okay, I see what you're getting at there. Huh, okay.
Just not currently occupied.
Okay. All right, well, that's coming up later. We'll have some talk about that. So thanks very much.
Anyone else? Okay. So next, I guess we're public input to follow each item. So this is an item, I take it. So
Yes, thank you. Just to provide clarity, because this is a statutory hearing, we do have an opportunity now for the public to speak to this item. If anyone wanted 2 minutes to speak to this agenda item, the members of the public are welcome to come and speak.
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Tina DeMello. This is Marco DeMello. So we're in 2209 Tara Place. I believe we were the ones that sent the letter. Yeah, I think, you know, for us, is there going to be another meeting on this same? No, this is
just
it.
gets
Okay,
built,
perfect, perfect. So, of course, our concern is not that there's somebody's building something beside us. We were, you know, we've had 9 years and it's been fantastic. And I mean, it's totally fine. Our biggest worry is just where our fence is. That's pretty much where we are all the time, spring, summer. We have a pool right by the fence. We have a pool deck. You know, we got our dog, we got chickens. And safety is our number one concern, because obviously we know that there's going to be a slope. It does happen where people can back into a fence, and we could have our young niece in the pool and a car comes crashing through. So right now where our fence lies, there are lock blocks all on the back. So what we were just hoping, and I think that our safety concern would be addressed if a fence was just put on top of that. If a car came back down and hit the cement, it's not going to come flying through our yard. And I think that,
Yeah,
you
there's
know,
gonna be a significant slope here because there's 20-foot difference from our lot base grade level to the top, the adjoining property on the other side is 20 feet. So there's gonna be a significant slope coming down. So we need to see some more plans before they build, or else we have no control over
well,
that safety factor.
we just want to feel safe in our
Yeah,
own
That's our
house.
biggest concern.
You know, we've got kids, we've got a large extended family that, you know, spend a lot of time with us. And I would just be, yeah, really, really concerned. I wouldn't feel comfortable being there.
okay,
Yeah, okay,
sorry, that's time.
No, thank you. That's all we wanted to say. But
We'd have their-
but I feel like the drainage, that was really something that was
That's
looked at, and that sounds great to us. It was just like I say, the fence. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. Would staff like to respond to that concern? With the fence?
Yeah, through the chair, staff recognize the concerns here, certainly. The development variance permit itself, however, is not considering the fence at this time. It's looking at the front and rear setbacks. So the focus of the application truly is just the setbacks of the proposed structure to those lot lines. The slope itself and potentially some protective fencing measures may be something that can be considered at time of subdivision, but it's outside the scope of the development variance permit. Or worst case scenario, perhaps the neighbor could speak with each other and perhaps come to a conclusion of some protective fencing. Yeah. But yeah.
Is the applicant here? Would you like to add to that?
Sure. Good evening, council. My name is Paul Ackerman. We've owned this property since about 2012. And at that time, this variance was given to us by Sooke. We had to take the property over on a bad debt. And we didn't know that the variance that we received at that time, which is this exact variance, had an expiry date on it and it lapsed. So we're back here again, looking forward to developing the property and getting the variance back that we had before. I don't think there's too much concern with slope, because we will be taking most of the slope out of the property. I hear the neighbor, and I don't think there's a problem putting up a fence. We probably want a fence there. There will be a concrete retaining wall that abuts their property, and we could easily put a fence on top of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Ellen Lewis. I have a question about this because in light of what the province is asking for 4 buildings on every lot. So these are duplexes. Do these duplexes have suites in them? Isn't it all buildings are allowed suites now? It's a question because now you've got 6 more dwellings. So if you have 6 more suites, that's 12 dwellings. So then is there a traffic study? I mean, you know, all the traffic goes on Sooke Road. We all know that. So is this what we're going to be looking at with the 4 more buildings on every lot? Or up to 4 buildings in every lot? It's a question. Is like, are there going to be suites in these? First question.
That, staff, would you care to comment?
Yes, through the chair, it's unknown to staff at this time. I suppose right now they're duplexes. We don't have a building permit application submitted at this time. We will, but currently our zoning bylaw doesn't permit duplexes or the secondary suites in duplex units at this time. But once the zoning bylaw amendments are adopted, that may be a possibility.
Right.
Thank you.
So then would there be a traffic study after that? I mean, we're all concerned about the traffic. We're concerned about developing too fast. And where's the traffic going to go? Onto Sooke Road.
Care to answer again?
Sure. Yeah, there was no traffic impact assessment done for this property. Typically, we look at 25 units being a trigger for a more comprehensive study. In this case, one was not requested. This is not a rezoning application. This is a development variance permit.
Thank you.
Okay. I also wanted, I know I can't say it now, but I wanted to speak to the minutes before they were adopted, and I don't know how that can be dealt with because there was a big error in there and I'd like to correct it. So I don't know how you do that because there's no opportunity to correct it.
Public input will be later.
Yes, I know it's just for this, but I'm just asking, when can I do that? I know you adopted them, but it's incorrect minutes.
Okay, you can comment during public comment period.
Okay, thank you.
Second time speaker and oh, are there more first time speakers? Okay. Oh, sorry, I couldn't see you there.
Hi, my name is Janice Stanford and I'm at 2210 Terra. And I wasn't sure the process here. I didn't know if like there's drainage issues in that part of Terra, significant drainage issues. We built to 92 and since then as the neighborhoods kind of developed, everybody, including their lot, we've planted things and did things to try and minimize the impact of the water problem. when it rains, it's not unusual for there to be a river going down Terra. So our property isn't too bad, but I think on the other side where they're gonna build, there is a water issue. And I wasn't sure if that comes up at this meeting, or do we wait to the subdivision plans? I'm really not sure when that should be brought to anybody's attention. That's number one. Number two, I thought there was a building scheme on that property. Not sure if there still is. There was a building scheme on all the properties around there, on what you could build and what you couldn't. Just a thought. And the third issue is that the adjoining property owners would like to work with the developer directly. And we're not opposed to anything going in there. I don't think we have any problem with the variance. We have a problem with, is it fee simple strata lots, or is it a communal kind of a condominium type of strata, or just questions?
This is just to do with the variance this evening, so that'll come up later at a later.
I just wanted to get on record on the drainage, and that I think everybody's willing to work directly with the developer. And
Okay, thank you. That's your time is up. Thanks.
Okay.
Councillor
To
Becker.
Chair, a point of clarification, this won't come up again, will it, for the public?
Through the chair, that's correct. Following the development variance permit, they could apply for a building permit, which does not come to council.
So
The subdivision
public would not have
application.
any opportunity to weigh in on it. This
Yeah,
is
there's
one
a-
of the reasons why we have a great deal of problems with the provincial legislation. But anyways, yeah, thank you for that. For the audience to know that it will not come forward again.
Councillor McMahon.
So there is a drainage plan right now. So should the drainage plan not actually work in real life, what is the follow-up process for a neighboring property?
Yeah, through the chair. So as part of the preliminary layout assessment that was issued recently, one of the conditions would have been the stormwater management plan coming back to staff for review. So my understanding is that has not yet occurred. The PLA was just recently issued. If there was an issue with drainage, then it would have to obviously be rectified before the approving officer would approve that subdivision.
And so say the building and the work is complete and they go through another season and the management plan is not successful for whatever reason. What is the process for those community members to follow up on?
Through the chair, could you please clarify? So
I'm a neighbor. They've completed the build. They followed their storm management plan. Everything is built the way that was intended. But for some reason that engineering fails. So they're having water issues with runoff. What is their course of action to follow up with the district or the property owner to remedy that?
yeah, perhaps Mr. Carter can speak to this.
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor McMath, if it was a failure in the stormwater management plan, it would be a civil issue between neighbors, and the engineering consultant who created the plan would be named liable in it. If it wasn't a failure of the plan, but there was a stormwater issue of water going from one property to the neighbor's property, again, that would be a civil issue between two neighbors.
Thank you.
Councillor Beddoes again.
Yeah, through the chair to staff, building schemes. Now, I understand that Terra Place was when they first put those houses in. I know there's restrictions, you could only use shake roofs and all that sort of stuff. There was a building scheme. How is that registered with the district, or how does that work?
Yeah, through the chair, building schemes are private covenants essentially. So the district would not be party to a building scheme. It would not be the district to enforce the building scheme.
So the neighbors, if they have the original building scheme and this is against the building scheme, they would have to take civil action. Is that correct?
through the chair, if that was the case, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor St. Pierre.
Given that development was expected and everyone knows this is for variance for the setbacks and no one seems to be opposed to the variance on the setbacks, I'd like to move the motions if people don't have too many more questions. I don't see any, but okay. Oh, yeah, okay.
I could just address this week issue. These units are all two-story units. The main living area is on the first floor and the bedrooms are on the second floor. There's no opportunity to have a suite.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
So I'd like to move that council authorize the issuance of development permit variance PLN 01672 for proposed lot 2 at 2205 Terra Place to vary section 202.7 of the zoning bylaw number 600 2013 to reduce the required minimum building setback to the front property line from 4.5 meters to 2.3 meters and the required minimum building setback to the rear property line from 4.5 to 2.4 in accordance with the attached permit attachment 7, and that council authorize the issuance of development permit variance PLN 01672 for proposed lot 3 at 2205 Terra Place to vary section 202.7 of zoning bylaw number 600 2013 to reduce the required minimum building setback to the front property line from 4.5 to 3.2 meters and the required minimum building setback to the rear property line from 4.5 to 2.1 meters in accordance with the attached permit attachment 7.
Okay, that's moved by Counselor St. Pierre, seconded by Pearson. Any discussion?
None from me.
Okay. Okay, I'll call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, next up is delegations. We have Vancouver Island Regional Library Strategies and Impact presentation from, sorry?
Just
Oh. With Ben Hyman.
Good evening. Thanks for this opportunity. You have 10 minutes, 5 minutes? I'll talk really quickly. 5 minutes. Okay, great.
we can extend.
Okay, so I think it's probably been many years since we've been here to present, so happy to do that. And nice to see some familiar faces from AVIC. And hello, Trustee Bateman. Thank you for loaning him to us. And hello, Chair. We're really proud and privileged to be the service provider for library service here in Sooke and for 38 local governments from Masset in the north down to right about here and Sydney North Saanich as well. Chair Hammond sends her regards, couldn't be here today. In 2023, we reviewed our vision and mission, and this is what we came up with. And it's really about lifting communities up right across the region. Our business is really booming, particularly post-COVID. Numbers are up right across the board. So let's talk about that a little bit. One phenomenon that's observed across North America is that public libraries have emerged since 2019 as the most used public amenity after sewer, water, waste, and roads. It's kind of phenomenal. Here in Sooke, you see the new numbers since the new facility went in about February of 2022. So we have 80,000 annual users now. That's about 6,700 people a month or 220 people a day. 38% of the population of the district of Sooke is an active card holder as defined by the province. We're serving all demographics. We had 348 events attended by 624 people last year. And we now have the third largest collection in the province of BC. That's behind Vancouver and Burnaby. And of those users, what's really important, again, post 2019, is that about 40% of our usage is entirely digital. So we're in the physical space for sure, and then also really heavily into streaming audio and video and podcasts and all of those things. And folks are canceling their Netflix and their Spotify and all those accounts and really leaning into their card. And of course, the card is free. There's tax behind it, and I'll talk about that. Just to show some of the metrics since the new branch, you really see the increase. It's a 65% increase in use. More space has really allowed us to do a lot more in terms of programming, and people are loving it. And then in terms of programming, 92% more. You see that huge jump with the new branch. And of course, we're so excited to see progress on the Lot A Community Hub and anticipating that orange bar will go through the roof as more and more amenities come. You can see the active users in the district. The higher the intensity of the color, that's where you've got a lot of population, and that's where a lot of users are, but it stretches right out. I think we're off the map into Port Renfrew there, but you can see Jordan River and right around wrapping up to the border with at the edge of Juan de Fuca. New strategic plan last year, 5 key goals, which I won't read to you in order because of time, but here they are, and we're working through them and hoping to complete them all by the end of 3 to 5 years is our current objective. And that supposes some budget behind it. Again, some of the research that backstops some of what I'm talking about today is this report, which really observed nationally over 3 years the phenomenon that we're seeing, a real lack of cohesion in society and how that's showing up for public libraries, making a real difference in terms of the type of usership and the challenges and opportunities that come with it. A couple of key points here. Within the G8 community, Canada and BC really lags. We're bottom of the 8 for funding for public libraries. So to know that Chair Hammonds and the board are doing everything they can in coordination right across the sector and across the province to continue to put pressure on the province and the federal government. Budget 2024, which we're well into this year, really was about right sizing. We identified some financial legacy issues associated with the previous administration, and with tremendous support from our Audit and Finance Committee, Executive Committee, and Board. We're recovering from that, but we needed to right size to see that. The increase you see there and the levy for the District of Sooke, which worked out to about $63 per capita. The same is true for CRD, just under 63. We do benchmark. Here's an comparison chart that you can see. So looking at some similar sized communities, both within the Greater Victoria system and then the outside of system like Whistler, and then 3 communities within Virrell. And you'll see that District of Sooke is happily, I never know how this will turn out till I show up, under average, below average relative to those communities. So we're happy to be able to provide that service in that great new facility. Budget 2025 just getting started. We just had a preliminary assumptions conversation with Executive Committee and Audit and Finance on Friday, and we have milestones as you see there.
Excuse me one sec. We have a motion to extend time.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, carry on.
Okay, great. Now I'll talk slowly. I will go back maybe here and slow down. This piece, budget 2024 and 2025, because it's relevant, of course. So 95% of our funding comes from our 38 local governments. The ministry in the late 80s was about 25% of our funding, and they're about 4% now. So the pressure is on to try to see that. There was a resolution that passed at AVIC. There's another resolution coming forward, most likely from Virrell and Greater Victoria for UBCM. And the difference that you may see there still being drafted is considering the ministry's responses over the last 5 to 10 years. For every year, there's a resolution on library funding, and every year nothing changes. So we're trying to raise the bar on that government relations strategy. I'll just leave it there. Any questions?
Thank you. Questions? Councillor St. Pierre.
I didn't have time to really have a look at your strat plan. It went by awfully fast. But one of the things that we're all affected by is just the amount of information that people are getting through social media and through digital means. But librarians have often been a pretty trustworthy source to go asking questions. So I'm curious about if there's a part of what you're doing in the strat plan in terms of helping the public with basically making their way through the morass of information and misinformation that's available to them.
That's a great question. Thank you. And we're seeing so much of that. And it does show up in a lot of our goals. But the first one here, which is recommitting to improving literacy levels across the region. So according to Dakota Literacy, which holds the pen provincially on all the wraparound providers in the literacy space, 4 in 10 adults are struggling with literacy daily. And that can be digital literacy, it could be mathematics, it could be reading, it could be precisely as you're saying, like media analytics and the ability to go deeper and ask questions and analyze sources and those sorts of things. So we do see an opportunity to work with partners much more overtly on that. Challenging space. Those are really stubborn numbers. 25 years in this sector to see the numbers at that depressing level, 4 in 10 is really not great. It shows up, it's the literacy being the key social determinant of health. If it's struggling that much, it's showing up as costs in all of these other spaces as well. So we can't do nothing. We have recommitted. It really will depend on, can we coordinate our partners and find role clarification for each of the partners to really take this to the next level.
I'll ask sort of a related question. I mean, a lot of our local newspapers are struggling financially and otherwise they're closing down and so on and so forth. Our library is considering a partnership with them in terms of, you know, either providing hosting or whatever that might look like, because certainly we would struggle without our paper and all of our papers are at risk.
Yeah, I think you've identified a really nice opportunity for us. I think there's excellent partnership possibilities with local media on the island, to the extent that local media is still viable on the island. And there's in fact so few now. So there's the large Black press, which is in receivership. Then there's a lot of community-based, as you have here in Sooke and elsewhere. We've recently actually entered into a sublease agreement with CBC in our administrative space, just as one example, just to try that partnership out. So we had a vacant office, they're leasing their photojournalist for Nanaimo. So there's a range of opportunities there, and I'd like to see something grow out of that, as challenging as it can be also, of course, too. It's not necessarily a natural partnership, and yet these are the interesting times we're in.
Councillor Pearson.
Yes, you have an interesting choice of words on your strategic goal number 3, I think, if you could put that one there. Nope, maybe 4. Nope, maybe 2. Hold it, no, number 5, sorry, let's go to 5. Grow organizational culture. Usually I say develop a positive, I've heard words around that. So could you flesh that out for me, just because it's an interesting choice of words.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're excited about this. So this is about supporting our workforce to anticipate and adapt to changing needs in community. So it's probably true. We have an aging workforce. The average age is north of 40 for sure. And the kinds of community that would use library for the first 20 years of someone's career in library are not necessarily the sorts of folks that we're seeing now. So there's been a big change. And that means everything from all staff receiving naloxone training to all staff receiving trauma-informed care training, all staff receiving training in all the issues around the unhoused, and so on and so forth. So building on the great service ethic and all the empathy and compassion that exists, and then also acknowledging there's a lot of trauma that's happening every day in our branches. We have overdoses, we have all sorts of range of interesting things. So this goal is about rising above that, making sure that folks are well supported and that we can see ourselves into the future.
Excellent answer, and thank you for that.
Of course.
Councillor Bateman.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Hyman, for coming out tonight. We made this, Dana and I were at your AGM. We made that request. This is your road show. You're going to, I think, all 39 branches. You spent a fair bit of time in Masset of late, of course, the next branch. Now, I saw some fascinating data on those slides there I've not seen before, particularly that new branch, more library users. Can you call that one up?
Sure, let me go back there.
Yeah. The heat map is kind of cool too.
It is cool.
See that?
Yes.
We are serving the region out here.
Yeah.
So here we're seeing, do you know the percentage of Sooke residents who do have a card at this point?
Yeah, it's 38%.
38.
Yeah.
So lots of room for growth. What do you feel are the keys to driving those numbers up? Or is there a ceiling on this sort of thing?
Yeah, no, it's that's a great question. So I think we're happy with 38% in that it is a really huge number of residents. So that's great uptake for public service, we think. Can we do more? Absolutely. I think part of the issue is we may have had a bit of a stealth marketing campaign over the last 88 years. Today is actually our 88th birthday as a regional library district. And so I think there's a notion starting sometime in the 90s that folks thought libraries were dying and we were all going to move to electric paper and And of course, none of that's materialized. But in there, I don't see that the sector rose to that misinformation campaign to really say to all users that there's all potential users, that there's a lot of different services that they can avail themselves of. Everything from 3D printing to all the sorts of programming and content and the expertise of our staff. So we need to tell that story better and we need to work with our partners better on that, chiefly local governments, but also all the other partners that we're working with. And then one of the, or maybe some of the most stubborn issues are interagency. How do we collaborate better with the school districts in our region? We've always had a good relationship here. How do we work better with the nations and so on? And so that's all built into this strategic plan. I don't know that we'll get it all done in 5 years, but that's the objective, is to raise that bar. We'd like to see 33% usage in every community minimum. So we're above that here in Sooke, but I'd love to see 50 or even better. I can't point to a community in Canada that is much higher than 38 right now, which is where you are.
Okay, good news.
Yeah.
June 11th is our second anniversary of opening the doors. And I was interested in that programming slide you had earlier. Yes, it's remarkable amount of stuff is going on in that library. The repair cafes and seed swap yesterday, plant swap. There's art programs and a wide range of activities. I'm not sure I have a question. It's a pretty remarkable spot. It's definitely not just about going in and getting your latest favorite book. Absolutely.
It's been incredible to see how many federal and provincial politicians like to drop by. So kudos for having that space. Everybody's liking to get their photos taken in the space, and that's good for business, of course. And yeah, it is such a wide range. And so these numbers include the third-party room bookings because we have those spaces, but also the programming that we put on or that we partner with agencies and community here to offer programming. And so it's the aggregate number, and it's a lot to manage at the branch level, all the competing demands on space, but it really is first come, first serve. Yeah.
And that one question before Councillor Beddoes steps in. I've always got another question. And this relates to people come up to me and say, oh, the library is no longer charging fees and fines. And that's fabulous. And yet, is that a major hit? And I try to explain it's not as big a hit as you might imagine, but tell us more.
Yeah, of course. So over 4 years, the board gradually reviewed and put the brakes on at each stop to make sure that that we weren't leaving money on the table, so to speak. Those 4 years preceded me, except for the last half of the 4th year. But we did remove all fees and fines, other than if you've lost the book or it's damaged, you're going to pay still. So the overall context is it was disproportionately affecting folks that were the most affected. So folks without funds to pay that. And so it was really an inhibitor and not in alignment with the values of the organization or our mandate under law, which is to be free and accessible. So how do you have this thing? By the end of the 4th year, it really was diminishing returns to chase the cash. So the servicing costs on having bank accounts in every community and all those sorts of things, the revenue generated had dropped from about $250,000 a year down to under 80,000 a year. And it was projected to continue to slide because so much of our business is digital now. Digital doesn't have overdue. When it's done, the digital lock, you don't no longer have access. So I think it was good timing. I think board took a lot of time with it. 4 years is 4 years of time to revisit it and make sure they got it right. And that was appropriate. Since then, Greater Victoria has gone fine free. So has Fraser Valley. So of the 50 largest libraries in the country, of which we are one, about 40 are now fine free. And in BC, of the largest 10, all are now, including us. So, yeah.
Councillor Beddoes.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to make a little comment here, which might help you in some of your other branches. It certainly helps having a brand new shiny building that is unique. You know, that round design, I think we all had some problems with in the beginning, but it stands out. And I think people seek it out better than the dingy place you had before. That has a great deal to do with your success. So you dealing with other branches, that's something to keep in mind when you build a new place like that. And it's very welcoming. Again, we've been in there for other purposes. It's very welcoming, easy parking, everything is there. It's well done. And I think that contributes to your success. And keep that in mind when you're looking at other libraries. It's a good job. Thank you.
It's great feedback. Thank you. I'll pass that on to the build team. It was award winning, so that was fantastic. But to your point also, I think the dinginess of the previous space was a contributor. And that's something on the board's mind also in terms of our facilities plan to make sure that we can keep things current and that no one's waiting for an impossibly long amount of time. So looking forward to budget 2025 to move through another project or two, and then budget 2026, and we should be caught up then. Then we just need to stay on it. Yeah.
Anyone else? I just have one comment that sort of further to what Councillor St. Pierre was mentioning during the AGM. I think it happened around the same time as that news story broke about how Bell Media had been acquiring local media from across the country and shutting them down. And the thought that occurred to me was that maybe there is a role for libraries to play in delivering local news stories to people, and that there should be some discussion about what that might look like, and maybe providing some studio space for potential podcasters to have a place to practice, or community radio stations and that sort of thing might be something to explore. But thank you.
That's fantastic. It has come up. We do have some spaces at Nanaimo Harborfront in particular that can serve the whole region with the green screen and all of the production tools. And then Masset, as Councillor Bateman mentioned, that's our next build, and it will be a library, and it will also be space for the Haida Language Immersion Lab. So working with First Nation there. And that's one of their thoughts, is to run a podcast. So we're trying it out slowly in a couple different scenarios, and then we'll see how we can scale it across the system. I've seen other libraries in the US that have portable podcast equipment that you can take out and you can bring back and use the Wi-Fi or sit in the parking lot. And some of those are really successful podcasts, actually, like millions of listeners, and they're in the parking lot of the public library. So try it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks again.
And now we have black bear cub conflict response. Is Marilyn Sundin here? Here she comes.
So I'm Marilyn Sundin. Thank you very much for the time. My request is that council adopt the motion attached to your package. And it's originally from North Vancouver, that the UBCM initiate changes to conservation services guidelines on human black bear response. These changes would include reviewing the actions of officers by an independent board, that cubs be transported to a sanctuary for assessment, and that an audit be done by the Solicitor General on the policies and procedures of conservation services. So to begin, the reason for this is that the problem is that an increasing number of bears are being killed every year by conservation officers. So we're not talking about hunting. In 2023, it was 603. Your background material has the bar chart on that. Now that graph includes cubs that are killed in addition to adults that are killed, but it does not include cubs who are orphaned and left to die. So the figure is actually higher than 603. Currently, the legislations for conservation services is a bit convoluted and somewhat conflicting. Rehab centers need permission from conservation services before they can go pick up a cub when they get a call from the public. There is no mandate for officers to take the cub to a wildlife sanctuary. In fact, under the Wildlife Act, officers are not allowed to rehab cubs over 1 year, which does not make sense because cubs usually stay for at least 2 years, often 3, with the mother. Often, unfortunately, the officers will kill the cub just because it's more expedient than transporting it to a center. Currently, there are no numbers on black bears. The last one that I could find, and even in talking to the Pacific Wild people, was from 2001, and it's a provincial doc entitled Black Bears in BC, Ecology, Conservation, and Management, and you can just Google that. In May of 22, a legislative committee recommended that there be the creation of a single independent body to oversee all police and safety personnel. The Independent Investigation Office covers police, but not conservation officers. So what that means basically is that BC Conservation Services, as a publicly funded agency with armed officers, has no oversight nor accountability. And that's basically the point that I'm making through this is oversight and accountability. It's just not there now. Admittedly, the issue of human-wildlife conflict is complex. Fires, drought, climate change lead bears to taking more risks, which of course means there's going to be more interaction between people. If given a chance to return to their preferred food source, it has been found that bears do not actually habituate to garbage. Admittedly, also, relocating can confer problems, but indeed and absolutely, it beats a bullet and cutting a young life short. In true conservation, we need to protect the individual in order that the species will flourish. Killing shatters the intricate web of complementary systems in nature. Part of the answer lies in education, and Wildwise Society does an amazing job doing that. As well, council has been very proactive in amending our bylaw where officers can ticket offending households. I just heard recently that CTV had a story today, or just recently, that the CRD is going to be passing bylaw guidelines that would include education and enforcement on problem garbage households. So this is all really good work and really good news. But it's a bigger picture, as I mentioned, and it involves a lot of pieces. My request then to adopt the motion is not to demonize any agency, but to look at this big picture. I'm asking for improvements to the agency with more structure. Humans need to find non-lethal ways to deal with and manage wildlife. It's about accountability and about transparency. So I respectfully ask that Mayor and Council adopt this motion. And I might add that just last week, the Lower Mainland Local Government Association unanimously supported it, which means that all the municipalities from Hope to Pemberton support it, and the more support, the better.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Questions from council? Councillor McMath.
First, I just wanted to say you are incredibly well spoken.
Well, thank you.
So North Vancouver's supported, and the other group you just mentioned, have any of them made submissions to UBCM?
Yeah, like the original motion was from North Vancouver, like it's in your package. And it's I think it's also Lions Bay passed that same motion. And this Lower Mainland Local Government Association which is like the lower mainlands municipalities. So they had their AGM and then they just supported it. So like it's gonna go, my understanding is that procedurally, maybe you can correct me, procedurally, it would go to UBCM anyway, because those municipalities have passed it. But my impetus in coming to council here is that the more support it gets prior to, then the stronger the argument will be toward it, because I doubt that it's going to be a slam dunk like from all the municipalities across the province, because some of the you know, I don't know, maybe in northern province, you know, may not be in favor. So because I consider this just so important with numbers dwindling, and again, about accountability, like this is a public agency that doesn't actually have an overseeing board, and you have officers walking around with guns. Like there's something wrong with that picture. So we need to protect the species. We need to protect them individually to protect the species.
So is your request for us to submit separately or to just send in support for the original submission?
I think separately,
Okay.
you know, that you would send it like the way it is in the packet, like send that, and that it's Sooke's submission.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Beddoes.
Yeah, well, you're probably not gonna like my comments then, because I'm opposed to what you're saying. And I have firsthand experience with rescuing bear cubs. I found the conservation officers bent over backwards. Came to my house at 9:30 at night to retrieve this little cub, and the next morning took it up to Arrington, and we were able to go and visit it up there and closed circuit TV. And when it was set free that following spring, and my feeling of it's almost villainizing these conservation officers. Their mandate is to save animals at all costs. They're in difficult situations sometimes when they have to make a life or death situation for a bear. And for them to go through a board and a panel and to say it's yay or nay to do something, it's just the cumbersome bureaucracy which will serve nobody. I think these officers that I've dealt with over the years, not just the one that came to my house for this baby bear, but other ones, they just go out of their way not to kill anything. And that just goes against their grain of why they're in that service. So I will not support this, and I will speak against it at UBCM. I think the province and it's the provincial jurisdictions hire these officers with the intent that they are there to protect the wildlife as well. And when you go into interaction with farmers, some of them have to put out a tremendous amount of money to fence their properties to keep wildlife out, because it's their home too. We're aware of that. I got bears on my back porch even tonight before I came here, and I understand it's their home too. That's why I gave up my raspberry patch, because they took it over. So I'm all for protecting the bears, but I think just to have another oversight committee of people second guessing everything that a conservation officer has to do in the field is not going to serve anybody. So I appreciate your passion for this, and I love the idea of saving wildlife, but I think this is just another layer of bureaucracy that is not going to serve anybody.
Can I respond? Is that allowed?
Counselor St. Pierre first.
You probably won't like this either, because I do farm in Sooke, and I've had animals, killed by bears. They had to be dealt with. Again, the conservation officers were very careful. They didn't want to go immediately to a final solution, but I'm in agreement. And I also see, like, within what's been proposed, there has to be actual wildlife centers to accept. So as we've discovered with other issues, that means that the province has to be willing to pay for a whole bunch of centers to accept potentially 600 plus bears. Where do they go after that? My understanding is that when you try to transport a bear to a new site, there's bears already there. They already have territory. They starve. It's cruel. It's not a kindness. Taking care of the population as a whole makes a lot of sense. Taking care of individuals by making them unhappy and starving is not really where I'd want to go. Conservation officers, I understand, need to have training. They need. They're not exactly out there gun happy and shooting up the streets either. I think that's, if there ever was a problem, then I'm sure that there would be measures taken immediately, but my understanding is there really hasn't been any issues. As well, we have about 7,000 bears on Vancouver Island, black bears. We have the most robust population, the most diversity in the bear population, and we have an awful lot of people basically working really hard like Wildwise and ourselves to protect them. But this sounds like really costly measures that are not going to really help the population.
Councillor Bateman.
If I may.
I'll go to Councillor. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I just want to remind council that at this time, we are just asking questions from the delegate, and after which council is free to deliberate.
Okay, thank you. Did you have a question, Councillor Bateman?
No, more comments than questions, but thank you, Marilyn, for this, Miss Sundin, for this presentation tonight. And on May 27th, Molly Cameron from Wildwise Society will be in the room, I believe. She's confirmed now for that date. Yes. And so, yeah, I have no questions at this point.
Can I respond to?
Certainly.
So, as I said, it's not like it is a complex situation, and this is one piece of the puzzle. And as I said, I'm not trying to demonize conservation officers. I knew coming here that Sooke is doing really well on that, and that we have awesome officers. And when I spoke to Molly, well, by email, there's been like they bend over backwards. I don't disagree. But we're talking about the province, and that's not true across the province. And they are being killed in front of residents in other places. And that's why this motion came from the mainland, North Vancouver, and it was adopted by other municipalities who did see that that was a problem there, because the residents did go to their council and they did bring these problems forward in very impassioned ways. And so it was passed. Again, not surprisingly, Sooke and Vancouver Island are kind of unique, particularly in the area of conservation and in our views on that kind of thing. So that's why this goes to UBCM, not just our little area, you know, because we don't have a problem really. But accountability and oversight, I think, are good for all public agencies. You know, that's sort of a perspective. So, especially if they're carrying arms.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Well, I think I'm going to take a chance to make a few comments just based
Okay.
on the research I did. And Ms. Cameron will be with us, as I say, in a couple of weeks. She did note, yeah, it's such a complicated issue, as you say. 604 bears were lost in the province last year. This was attributable to the drought, the high temperatures, very bad berry crop, apparently. So there was a lot more garbage activity. Here in Sooke, we lost 4 bears in 2023. They were all adults and were not eligible for rehabilitation and were food conditioned and or causing property damage. You know, at the CRD last week, when the model bylaw motion came forward from the town of View Royal, a conservation officer was in the house describing just how traumatizing it is to euthanize, advocating very strongly for increased education and for the kind of bylaw enforcement that we in Sooke passed a couple of months ago, which allows Medea and her team to ticket people who are fragrantly leaving garbage out and about. I think bringing a motion forward from this council would require us to delve very deep into this, educate ourselves, and be in a position to really formally bring it forward. And at the same time, we, likely all of us, will be at UBCM, and we will have the opportunity to join that debate and vote at that time. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Ms. Cameron has to say in 2 weeks, and we will definitely ask her about this and get further insights.
Thank you, Councillor Beddoes, and then Pearson.
Since we're having a discussion at council, I just want to make clear that the conservation officers carry sidearms for protection because they're out there dealing with poachers, they're out there dealing with the people with guns, because hunters and all those that are out in the bush in the fall and fishermen are armed. And so it was thought it's best to arm them as well for their protection. The sidearms are not there to shoot animals. They have a long gun they can get to if they need that. So, you know, I just want to make that point that that's there for their protection. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Pearson.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, Ms. Sundin. It's a complex issue, and I think that our council has demonstrated over and over and over again that we are supportive of conservation of bears and preservation of bears and the bear population. The issue of government oversight of anybody it could take our support, but there's a lot more to what the conservation officers do alongside of the bear control and what we do in the municipal world isn't always aligned up with what's going on in the province and around environmental protection, which is considered a resource, wildlife in our province. So we're in that fine thing. I would have no problem filing this report for information, given that we have the presentation in May, as well as some more information in UBCM for us to look at and consider how we're going to vote at UBCM. Because if these motions are going forward, they will get time on the floor at UBCM, and then we will have that opportunity to vote in favor of what's being proposed by other municipalities. I think we've demonstrated that we do care. And we do care about the bear population. So I'm not necessarily in a hurry to put forward a motion that may become redundant in some way and more discussion to come forward. So I'm kind of proud of what we've already done as a community. So that's my part.
Councillor St. Pierre.
Just as a comment, the conservation officers at the end of the day are staff. They follow rules, they follow regulations, they have to do their job. As politicians, we don't necessarily know what's going on in terms of their daily work. We don't know what their workload is. We don't know how stretched the resources are. We don't know whether or not they actually have the time to actually transport all these animals or so on and so forth. One of the reasons it's so complicated is because we're delving into something that we just don't have a lot of information about. And we don't know what a decision to move this forward could have on the service as a whole. And so I'm not in favor without more information on doing this sort of thing.
Councillor Pearson.
Just a clarification, this isn't a staff report, this is a delegation request. So no action is actually required of council unless they wanted to have an action.
Okay. Well, thank you for your presentation, and we will take it under advisement. Next up, we have report of the Chief Administrative Officer.
If I may, the agenda was revised in order to speak to 10.5.
Yes, sorry about that. Food bank. Come on up.
Mr. Chairman, I have to recuse myself. I'm on the board of directors of the Sooke Food Bank.
Get out.
Run away, Al.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for having me. I think I was here in December. And I have nothing to update on the building, but I will update you on our increases. So we are serving 500 to 600 families a month. We have established a food bank out in Beecher Bay, which is keeping 60 families out of our parking lot a month. We're servicing about 60 families up in Port Renfrew. And then we're doing an outreach program now for the shelter and people living on the streets. So just those programs are keeping 200 families a week out of the parking lot, and then we're able to serve the rest. I mean, I could go on. I can't give you all the numbers. You know, it's bad. We're dealing with mental health. There's an opioid crisis. We're all still in it. Housing, I'm grateful for the housing that's coming in. It doesn't go fast enough, you know? And it's hard. Like, I could tell you all the stats, but I want to tell you, like, we helped 2 families move out of town because when you're in an abusive situation, it's easier to move the people being abused than try and contain the abuser. So we did that. We helped 2 people move into housing that have been homeless for 4 years. That was amazing. We've lost 4 clients to addictions, and they were promising people. We've lost volunteers just to old age. I've been coming here since 2011, was my first time coming to council. Nothing's changed. It's gotten worse, just so y'all know. And I'm tired, and I don't want to have to come and beg for money. And I get that it's part of the problem and that I shouldn't come here just to whine, but you guys don't come hang out with me to get you face to face. So I guess what I'm saying is I am so grateful for all the support all these years, and but we need more. And I don't even like to say that for the good people of Sooke who sympathize with us, but they're going through it too. So our service agreement is up. Of course, I want to ask for hordes and hordes of more money, but I'm being respectful and just going to say, whatever you guys give us, we're really, really happy. And come down and see us at the Sooke Food Bank and see what we're doing. We've got a nurse practitioner. We have the ministry comes down, they can print checks right in our parking lot. We were the first food bank in BC to get these services, and they're modeling after us now. We have a free store. WorkLink comes out and hangs out with us, and you can get your hair cut, for crying out loud. I have an in with a dentist that might look at you on the side. So we're trying to do things that'll make it so people aren't having to use a food bank. And that's about all I have to say. I welcome everybody, including staff.
Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, so thank you, Ms. Cadell.
You're welcome.
Cadell?
Yeah.
Metzger. So in our staff report, there are 2 options. One for us to jump straight into a $50,000 a year service agreement by utilizing the COVID relief funds.
Nice.
And that there is leeway in that area, or as we understand it, you'd be happy with a 20% bump annually until you reach 2027, which would be 50,000.
Yeah, no, we'd be happier with the 50.
50 right up front. Okay. All right. That's clear. And I know you would be using it to just keep pace with this crazy growing demand.
We've already spent $120,000 this year, and I'm in May. That's not Christmas. Like Christmas, its own entity is $75,000. So I'm already so my Christmas planning starts next month. Yeah. It's unreal amounts of money.
On a somewhat separate subject, the new space at the Baptist Church.
Yes.
Potentially. How do you see funding that project?
Well, let's see how I do it, everything else. I'm just gonna hope like heck this all goes forward for us. I've been applying for grants. I probably have about 140 grant applications ready to go. I'm just waiting, like there's some lawyer pieces and stuff. And I've had private donors come and mention a few things to me, so I'm confident I'll get it. The bank also has told me that we could get a mortgage if we had to. So regardless, we need the building. The building's gonna get built.
And this funding would be for operational.
This is for food.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not just food, not for gas, not for anything like, just food.
Anyone else? Councillor St. Pierre.
Given you're working with this sort of thing all the time, I know that in the UK, they actually have legislation that basically requires grocery stores to reduce the cost of their food that's about to expire progressively until it's 80% off on the day that it's about to expire, kind of thing. And it allows people to go directly to grocery stores and use them as a distribution point for some of this food. Would you want, for example, this council to do advocacy work at UBCM for that kind of a?
Superstore already does that.
Yeah.
So what used to happen is food banks would get that food. So now what they do is they flash freeze it, they put it together with other discontinued or food that's about to go out of date. They make a meal and then they sell it for 80% less. And then anything left after that then goes into the loop. So where that used to be great for food banks, it's not great for food banks. And it's good for people if you live in Langford. I can't see our Sooke grocery stores being able to afford to do that.
Okay, so you don't see that as a particularly useful.
And it's
option?
not something that's gonna, if people are poor, they're poor. If you have money, are you gonna spend it on cleaning supplies or food? You're gonna go for the food. If you, do you know, like it? And do we feel better because the poor person got the cheap meal? Like, I don't know. I don't know about the grocery stores and all that stuff. What I know is people don't make enough money to live. Rent and everything, the cost of everything has gone up way more than the money we give people. If we funded seniors and disability, 1/3 of my clients would go away. Just from, so maybe we could advocate for living wages. Or wage equity, I don't know. But I see it more as people can't keep up than anything else.
Yeah, it is a growing problem, and not just here, it's all over
It's everywhere.
the continent. And I would be in favor of finding the money. I think it's I don't know whether it should remain a municipal responsibility. I think it should be up to the province and the federal government to.
Oh, no, I go looking everywhere for money.
No,
I don't leave anybody
absolutely.
off.
But yeah, I don't quite know where to go from here if we do 50,000 annually or I mean, the cost is going to keep going up. So where do we go from here? I guess is the question. Councillor Bateman.
So I'll second a motion if you were to follow the staff recommendation or an alternate recommendation, which states motion that the district will provide a new agreement for the Sooke Food Bank with a service fee of $50,000 starting in 2024 with the increase in funding from the COVID Restart Reserve. Do you want to move that? Pardon? Okay, well, I'll move it.
Any.
So I'll
anything to
motivate
add?
on that. I know that COVID Reserve Fund is a dwindling source, and we do have ambitions to use that money to build out the plaza on Lot A, which is going to be a beautiful community gathering space, future home of the country market and other things. However, I'm really delighted to have been part of a council that continually taps in this funding to support community enterprise and community wellness and health. And Searchin has a $50,000 service agreement. Sooke Family Resource Society is up to 45,000. And last year when you came and we extended your service agreement for 1 year, it was with this very issue in mind, that your service, the demand is growing. What was it? 60 new families in March alone, I think it was. So that's my motivation.
Counselor St. Pierre. Or
I would support this too, but I have to admit that I'm more impressed by the work you're doing with haircuts and cutting checks and getting people services they need so that they don't become homeless. Than necessarily the food. The food is necessary. It makes sure that people are fed. That's wonderful. But if you were to tell me that a substantial portion of that money was actually going towards helping people not need the food bank, I would be even happier. So I'm just going to throw that out there. Okay, just letting you know. I'm glad you're doing that work, and that's how I feel about it.
sorry, Counselor McMath, did you have anything to add? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, just before you call the question, just wanted to clarify the term years, if you wanted it to go to 2027, like the other service agreements. And if the 50,000 is the base, the new base, do you want it to be increased annually by CPI similar to the other service agreements?
Good question.
Well, as the mover, I will add those two component pieces that we get this aligned with the other service agreements and the CPI continues.
And Counselor McMath, sorry, as the seconder. Did you want to comment?
I like to be succinct. Yes. Yeah. And thank you so much for all the work you do. I know that it is very draining. So I hope that you have support systems for yourself, because you are giving so much. So, okay, I'm happy to hear that.
Counselor Pearson.
Thank you. Following on Ms. McMath's statements, I'm always humbled by you when you come here. And I know that you come to, it's asking for money, but it's not asking for money, it's asking for help. And, you know, money's one thing, but what you're doing is immeasurable. And, you know, I wish we had more money to give you. I really wish we did, because, you know, we see it every single day in our community and what's around us, and it's not that traditional people down on their luck. It's people who have good jobs, good paying jobs, their mortgages have doubled, and there's lots of people who are struggling that we come across in our day-to-day lives.
I just want to say too, that if you know somebody who's working for $25 an hour or less, they're not making it. They're using food banks. That includes your outreach workers that are working with people out there. That's your teachers' aides. Those are the people that are coming to the food bank. They're working. They're trying. They're doing everything that we tell them as a society they have to do to get ahead. And what saddens me is they've got children watching them do all these things. Nobody gets ahead. Why do you even want to try then? You know, we have to make life look a lot more fun and better and rewarding, because right now, if you watch these kids that are now sliding into that cycle of drugs and addiction, it's their hope. They have no hope. If my parents go out and work every day and they can't do it, and now you're telling me to go get a job and life's going to be great, you know, a drug dealer can go to them and go, oh, but look, the lifestyle I'm doing for this money. And there's no grab for us. There's nothing that I can say to give the people the hope. If that made any sense, sorry.
Counselor Bateman.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that COVID relief fund just vanishing. It'll dwindle and it'll be gone eventually. So what can this council do to advocate for you and supporting you as you move forward to get the grant funding? Can you involve us more directly?
I
Sorry,
certainly could.
Could our corporate officer has something?
If I may, pardon me, there's a motion on the floor and council needs to deliberate it among themselves and not ask questions of the delegate at this time.
Thank you. So I'll call the question then. All in favor? That's unanimous. Yeah.
Well, that was a good question, but one to think about. So how this council can assist you in advocating for what you need?
I would love to see at UBCM, like, let's advocate for living wage and get. There should be rewards for companies that pay their employees well. Right? Let's reward those people. Maybe other people will jump on board.
Thank you. I think the fact that our COVID relief funds are dwindling is evidence enough to the province that they need to step up and provide some ongoing funding similar to that. So we'll work on that. Next up is the report of the Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you. Just in the interest of time, I won't read verbatim everything in the report. Just wanted to highlight a few things.
I was looking forward to it.
I'll save that for another day, maybe. A couple things not included in the report. I just wanted to extend a thank you to the fire department and the mutual aid departments that responded to the structure fire over the weekend. Their quick response, saved the whole house from going up. So appreciate their action on that. As well, fire related there's a news release with a bunch of information on the category 2 and 3 fire bans as of May 17th. And additional information is included there on the specifics on that. So anyone interested in the details can go to our website, sooke.ca, and click on the news release to find further information. A couple items I wanted to highlight for the events were, this is, I believe, our second year for the broom drop off, and a couple more Saturdays left to drop off your broom and bloom. It's everywhere, so feel free to get your clippers out and start chopping it down. The Secret Garden Tour is returning after a 4-year hiatus, and that is on Saturday, June 1st and Sunday, June 2nd. Markets are occurring. On the staffing front, there's lots of new staff beginning. Chris Marshall's starting at the beginning of June here. Excited to have him join the team. Deputy Director of Corporate Services, Heather Powers, is joining on the same day as well. We have two, the karma paid off for throwing this out there. We have 2 lead engineering technologists that have accepted the positions. One starting on June 3rd as well, busy day for IT and orientation on that day. And Sophia will be starting on July 3rd. We've also hired emergency program manager who will be starting at the end of the month here. Auxiliary building official, Ethan Wade, started last week. And is just working part-time right now and will be available full-time starting in June. So getting him trained up for the busy building season here. Also, just some more recent updates. We have an accepted offer for an engineering tech 1 as well, who has joined us. Originally wasn't interested in the competition, but has had a change of daycare plans and so is now available. So we jumped on that opportunity to have her rejoin our team. She joined us and did some parking study work with us last year. So excited to have her rejoin the team in a couple weeks. We also had an auxiliary bylaw officer start. Wade started today around the office getting orientated. He's working with us on a part-time basis based on the available hours that he has. So excited for him to be seen around the community and provide some support. And the goal is to try and have 2 bylaw officers available 7 days a week. And so we'll keep striving to achieve that. And as well, we are making an offer to auxiliary parks laborers. As you know, every year we hire auxiliary parks laborer staff to help with all the lawn and yard and park maintenance. So that's on the staffing front. We are actively recruiting a senior planner with Miss Johnson leaving us at the end of June. I'll say something at a future meeting about Miss Johnson and her contributions to the district over her time here, but thankfully we've got her for 6 more weeks. So interviewing for the Director of Financial Services. at the end of the month here on the return of our manager of HR, who's just on a vacation right now. And lots of news bulletins. Check our website. There's lots going on. Lots of hyperlinks are included here. I wanted to just briefly touch on e-com. E-com, as council and the community may be aware, is a potential downloaded cost to the district. And only a few municipalities on the South Island here seem to be impacted by this. So while council's advocating, just wanted to highlight there is staff advocacy happening as well with the province on that front. Happy to provide further information as it becomes available, but another round of letters is being submitted into the province to seek Treasury Board approval for additional funding to bridge that gap. A couple public participation events. The Sooke skate park concept design is open till May 21st. And our own initiative for crosswalk additions and improvements is open till May 15th. Projects Church and Throop Roundabout is looking amazing. It's reached substantial completion. So really excited to get that project fully operational. It's going to be a great addition to the municipality and hopefully ease some of the transportation situations that are occurring here. It's one project in a much larger scope of projects that we need to accomplish, but it's a very important one in the critical leg of the what are we calling this? The TMP, the Transportation Master Plan. Sorry, I thought he had a better word for it. Charters Road now will flip to being the main priority project. We have to respect the fisheries window, so the public will see work undertaken on that project throughout the rest of the year. Little River Crossing and Multi-Use Trail is making steady progress. And the wastewater expansion, the final piece of the expansion project is the West Coast Road Sanitary Force Main. The tender is just recently closed, and so staff will be reviewing that and awarding the contract to the successful applicant. I'll leave it at that and happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councillor Beddoes for a comment.
Yeah, first of all, congratulations to our CAO, a great newspaper article. Your smiling face in there. But what was even more important is the other article with the people on Church Road, very happy that the CAO and engineering staff would take the time to go down there and address their problems. That just speaks volumes for this community. The other thing is really pleased to see the hiring up. I mean, I got tired of looking at some of these dark, dingy offices with nobody in them. And I think we were in some pretty bad straits there for a while. And I'm glad to see that we're just about up to a full complement. So congratulations, CAO. Job well done.
Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, thank you for that. Oh, go ahead.
Apologies, sorry, just Modi. I forgot Modi, if that's what you were gonna
I have
ask.
two things,
Okay.
but I'll get to that one next. But I first wanted to start with Charters Road. And I saw this alarming expression that the road will be closed for an extended period during that fish window period of June 15th to September 15th. What do you think extended is, Mr. Carter?
Most likely they'll have it done throughout the summer. So yeah, we're hoping for that. And yeah, they just put extended in case need be for any unforeseen circumstances, but we're hoping that they'll be able to get through it by September.
So would that be both lanes closed on Charters?
Yeah, everything would be closed because they gotta go right to the bottom to replace the culvert and build the walls up.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And yes, and I wanted to mention Moti because when the chief was here in your absence, whenever that was, a couple of weeks ago, I did raise, and it looks good to have these staff and Moti meetings every three months, I believe you've got plans for. But my concern was that the discussion we had with the ministry on April 8th might get lost somehow. So does the district have a plan to review that tape, to identify what Mr. Pearson and his colleague said they would do for us, or remind them of what we're seeking?
Yes, for sure. And apologies, I forgot to mention that as an addendum to my report here. Yes, so with the Modi, the first quarterly meeting is scheduled for mid-June. And so as the initial kind of kickoff meeting of this, that is definitely going to be the starting point for most of the conversation is what was discussed there, what were commitments made, and then ensure there's proper follow-up and follow-through and communication, whether it's to council specifically or the community as a whole on what the appropriate next steps are. The few quick updates are between now and mid-June, they are looking at the brush cutting by the boat launch parking and just need to be sensitive to property boundaries as well. They can't access private property to cut that far. So they will be looking into that and hoping to confirm at this mid-June meeting if there is any further work that they can undertake there. And as well, I believe they had just completed a light timing cycle, so they're just going to review the results of that and hopefully start that discussion at the June 15th meeting.
Councillor McMahon.
Is Modi going to be reaching out to those property owners to ask if they can go further back and cross over the boundary?
I'm not sure at this time, but we can confirm at that meeting and follow up.
Thank you.
Don't see any other hands up, but I have one question just about, I guess, on the annual patch and pave, and this may be bigger than that, but the section of Church Road to the north of the roundabout for the 150 meters or so is, I would say that it's failed. It's there's probably not much there for road base, but it looks like it needs some attention. Is there a plan to look at that?
Yeah, to the chair, we can look at considering that with this year's funding. If not, we could flag it for next year.
Thank you. Come on up.
And okay, with a on page 13 of the minutes, it says Eleanor spoke to the need to create access lanes for emergency vehicles in downtown core. That's not what I said. I asked for I said a center lane from the new highway all the way to Sooke so that people could turn left, get into the left lane, and instead of sitting there in the lane and trying to turn left and the traffic backing up. I live there. I've seen it for 37 years. What's happened, it's ridiculous. So that's what I asked, a middle lane going down all the way down so people can turn left either way. Like they do in Colwood. It's worked for years there. And the other one was exploration of electric train route. It was a train, yes, possibly a train or rubber on the Galloping Goose, not a train, another route, but using the Galloping Goose because it's 90 feet wide, splitting it in half and using it for half for rubber on there or electric rail, whichever we can afford to do. That's what's Modi. And also, instead of the clarification of the Grant Road connector, it was still, I was asking about the memorandum of understanding, if we still have the memorandum of understanding with Modi. And they did say, yes, we do, but it's been modified. So I think those are being clear in that is important. You can't just wash it down because it's information. And there was other people had information as well, and it's been watered down. I can't speak to theirs, but I think it's really important that we make sure that the minutes are clear.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's time.
And I have other things. This is a heck of a long agenda. I have other things I'd like to speak to, but I'll wait for somebody else and then.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come on up, state your name.
Excuse me, good evening. My name is Sean Paul, resident of Sooke. Here to speak about item 10.3, the 2170 and 2172 French Road residential strata conversion. In October 2022, we were both, my wife and I, contemplating retirement, began the process of getting our duplex that we built in 2015 strata with the intent of selling the other half of the duplex. Our tenant found a new rental in the summer. And given that we were selling, we can't in good faith rent the unit, knowing that the tenant would likely have to move out when the property was sold. To the date, we paid approximately $12,000 on architects, surveyors, lawyers to see the building meets the current regulations, which in March 2024, it was approved by council, or not by council, but by staff. And on April 12th, we also, following the direction of the Parks and Environmental Services Coordinator, planted a new street tree on the Larkspur side. Sooke is requesting, the district is requesting various frontage infrastructure, including new lanes, drainage, streetlights. There's no increase in pressure on the stormwater management. Sorry, I'm just trying to make time here. Including the infrastructure in this property, including stormwater, water, and sewage systems, has been in existence for almost 9 years and requires no current changes. In the fall of 2023, the BC government introduced changes to the Local Government Act to allow for small-scale multi-unit housing, and that municipalities should update zoning bylaw requirements to existing low-density multi-family residential zones to improve consistency and with ease which housing can be developed. Requiring these frontage requirements, including a sidewalk to nowhere, would not be high-performing nor consistent with the current neighborhood, add considerable costs and hardship to a homeowner, which is me and not a developer, and would delay an affordable house from coming directly onto the market. Reasonable compromises must be considered to stimulate development of housing.
Sir, that's time. Sir.
Right now? Oh, okay.
We'll
I didn't know
give
that.
other people a
Sorry,
chance.
that's why
and then you can
I
come
came
back.
up because I didn't know we were going to speak again. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay, I wanted to talk to the bylaws that you're putting forward for the development permit. What is it called? Development, no. Oh, my goodness. I'm gonna turn that off. The development application process and recommendations summary report. There's a lot in there about it's talking about properties outside of the downtown for 4 lots and less, that there won't be public hearings. It's recommended, and some places says it's recommended that there be discussion, and others that it's required that there should be discussions on the 4 lots unless, for one thing. And it's on the outside area, out of the town core. I mean, we're just experiencing this with Terra Place here, what can happen. And by the way, if you look at that, it actually, it includes suites. If you look at your report there on page 66, that includes suites in Terra Place. So that is 12 buildings. So that's the sort of thing that's going to happen in all those applications for up to 4 houses. And are those houses going to be strata, or are they going to be separate units? Are they going to be subdivided? How does that work? We still don't understand that part as well. So what's the ownership, and what's the tax implications? And will that, if there's 4 units, can they have duplexes in them, or can they be suited? There's a lot of things in there that are a lot of questions. I know, see, time.
That's time.
Yeah, but there is an opportunity, and I wonder, I need to finish this. There should be, I think that, can I ask for more time? Come back. Okay. I need the exercise. Okay.
Thank you. Sean Paul again. I don't think I'm going to need 2 minutes here to finish off. So reasonable compromises must be considered to stimulate development of desired housing, including the development of duplexes in existing neighborhoods, providing more diverse and affordable housing choices for families. The current frontages that we have are consistent with the current conditions of the neighborhood. And the local governments here have the ability to provide these compromises, and the provincial government is in support of the decisions the municipal governments are making when it comes to development of affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. One more time.
That's the problem. So this has been done, this has been put together by Urban Systems. It hasn't been, I don't know if there's been any discussion with the development group, the builders in Sooke. I don't know if there's been discussion with them about this. There hasn't been discussion with the community about it. Urban Systems puts it together and brings it forward as the law sort of thing, and you get to vote on it, but we don't get to really be a part of it, this discussion, and how it affects us and how it affects our next door neighbors. And when you can't speak to something because now the provincial government has said that we can't speak to it, that's wrong. And you were elected to represent us and not to represent the province. And I resent that you're being asked to represent the province. They're elected to do the provincial things, but not elected to control our municipalities. And I really resent that, and I think that we need to push back. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up is a health break. Sure, let's take 8 minutes. It's 8:52, so we can reconvene at 9. Okay, so moving right along, the consent agenda. The following items on the consent agenda be adopted by consent. Item 9.1 correspondence and item 9.2 committee of the whole resolutions development. Okay,
I'll put that in now that I've got my mic on. I'd like to pull 9.2 for further discussion.
okay. For the next meeting, okay, is that?
Oh. On the agenda, at the end, there's items removed from consent. So anything pulled from the consent agenda goes to the end of the agenda.
Okay, thank you. And-
So furthermore, we would be looking for a motion to adopt item 9.1 correspondent.
Okay.
Wait, I was gonna pull an item. Okay, I was gonna pull, I'm sorry here. 23F. This is response to minor DCC updates from the Sooke Builders Association.
Just the one?
Just the one today.
Okay. Okay, so having said that, that the item 9.1 with the exception of 23F be adopted by consent. Okay, all in favor? That's unanimous, I believe. Okay. Where are we? And then that the correspondence from April 24th through,
If I may, so that has already been moved. So now we jump down to 10.1.
okay. 10.1. Getting my pages mixed up here. Uh-huh. 10.1, so parks use permit. And we have a staff report, I believe.
Okay, and
Okay, good evening through the chair. The purpose of this report is to outline a parks use permit application request from Western Educational Adventures Incorporated to conduct nature-based summer activities between June and September at Sun River Nature Trail Park and the Sooke Potholes Gateway. The completed application form is included as attachment 1 to your report. Sun River Nature Trail Park is accessed via Phillips Road and Shambrook Place. There is parking available at the trailheads and a trail network along the Sooke River. There are no public washrooms in this location. Sooke Potholes Gateway is accessed via Sooke River Road and has a newly refreshed parking lot, pit toilets, signage, and stair access to the Sooke River. The applicant, Western Educational Adventures, is a for-profit business offering services that meet the definition of commercial use in the Community Parks Regulation Bylaw. The proposed nature-based summer camp activities, including swimming, fishing, orienteering, hiking, shelter building, and forest running, are included in the application request. Staff suggests that these activities align with the definition of low impact, low risk commercial use and are therefore subject to reduced permit fees as set out in the district's fees and charges bylaw. As such, a $200 permit fee is charged for the proposed use per 3-month period. Section 6 of the Community Parks Regulation Bylaw states that council may authorize the issuance of written approvals for commercial uses and establish requirements and conditions for commercial uses, including without limitation, requirements and conditions regarding security deposits, insurance, indemnification, date, hours of use and location, and aspects related to fire, vehicles and parking, camping, storage, commercial services, and signs. Staff have prepared a draft parks use permit that includes requirements and conditions for the proposed commercial use. This is included as attachment 2. The applicant has relayed the proposed group size and hours of operation, and staff have incorporated these into the draft permit. In addition to the more standard permit conditions addressing bylaw compliance, indemnification, and insurance, staff propose including permit conditions to limit nature-based activities so that they do remain low impact, low risk, and avoid environmentally sensitive areas. These conditions proposed are limiting activities to on-trail, beach, and in the open field at Sun River Nature Park, as included in the proposed permit in attachment 2. Provision by the applicant of a portable toilet for use by camp participants, managing their own waste, and specific prohibitions of activities such as shelter building using natural park features, open fires and fire building, archery, camping, and placement of signs and advertising. Finally, staff recommend that council authorize a commercial parks use permit for Western Educational Adventures for outdoor education programs at Sun River Nature Trail Park and Sooke Potholes Gateway in accordance with Section 6 of the Community Parks Regulation Bylaw number 101 and subject to the conditions outlined in attachment 2.
Thank you for that. Questions from council? Councillor Pearson.
Yes, thank you, and I'm happy to see people using the parks. Sooke Potholes Gateway, where like are they going to be staying on Sooke land specifically? Oh.
Far the other way.
Is at the end. Okay.
We lose the map. Yeah.
I think it was, yeah, that's all right.
So the gateway area, thank you, is essentially the end of Sooke River Road.
Yeah, this is the Potholes parking lot.
Yeah, yeah. And there's stair accesses
Okay.
to the water.
So they're just gonna go swimming, basically. They're not going up into the CRD lands, hiking and things like that. Because it's very close to the CRD there, right?
Yeah, so through the chair, the applicant may also be pursuing a permit with other park agencies.
And just and maybe a nitpicky question, how fussy are you gonna be on the sign placement? Because, you know, my grandchildren take part in scavenger hunts in parks and they post these little stick signs like go this way, go that way. So will that kind of thing, if they can take it out at the end of their day, like for a scavenger hunt as an example?
Precisely, that would be part of the leave no trace sort
Okay,
of
gotcha.
principle.
Okay, thank you. I'll be supporting this.
Councillor McMahon.
I'm going to move the motion that council authorize a commercial parks use permit for Western Educational Adventures Incorporated for outdoor education programs at Sun River Nature Trail Park and Sooke Potholes Gateway in accordance with section 6.0 of the Community Park Regulation Bylaw number 101 and subject to the conditions outlined in attachment 2.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Oh.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm absolutely in support of this. This amendment to the to this bylaw, I know is oh God, I've lost it. Yeah, I think I'll just stop.
Okay, on that, I'll call the question. Okay. Oh. Okay, that's unanimous. All right, and next up is engine 2 replacement.
Good evening, Chair and Council. Tonight, we're looking for some support from Council in regards to authorization to issue a tender for the purchase of a new rescue pumper apparatus up to $946,000. Sorry, $946,899 to be borrowed under Section 175 of the Community Charter from the Municipal Finance Authority, and that the loan be repaid within 5 years with no rights of renewal. So the report is pretty much self-explanatory. As you know, our previous report dated February 22nd of 2023 spoke to the issues in regards to procurement and supplies due to the pandemic. So basically, we're looking at our current fleet. We're looking at the ones that are aging out and their service life is coming to an end, and trying to get out in front of it by getting our sort of a procurement processes in place so we can get ahead of the ordering curve. So we're looking to see support to issue the tender for the replacement apparatus now, as it's anticipated due to the supply issues that the replacement for engine 2 will not be until early 2026. Previous council action on April 8th, 2024, council adopted the 2024 to 2028 5-year plan, and that included a 10% deposit for this engine 2 replacement. Engine 2, the one we're replacing, is a 2006 E1. And in 2026, it will have reached its service life or its age limit. And that has an impact on our fire underwriters' rates in regards to credits that we achieve. Other than that, I have no further information. Everything's in the report, and I'm happy to answer some questions.
Councillor McMath.
So you'll put the tender out, and then some companies now are adding stipulations where if the inflation continues to rise, so too will the cost, and will be locked into that regardless of how high it goes. What do you sort of anticipate? Do you see this staying at this number, or do you see this actually evolving?
To this point, we're using the Canoe Group. So it's a procurement process that allows us to utilize previous manufacturer builders. And that secures us a bit of a better rate. At this time, we have a letter of assurance that that price will stand.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor St. Pierre.
The council authorized staff to issue a tender for the purchase of a new rescue pumper apparatus for up to $946,899. We borrowed under Section 175 of the Community Charter for the Municipal Finance Authority, and that the loan be repaid within 5 years with no rights of renewal.
Okay, that's been moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Anything to motivate?
Just wish the community knew how much they're saving on their insurance rates by doing this, and not just looking at the taxes, but that's okay.
Councillor Bateman? Okay, Councillor Pearson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and I know it was covered in our 5-year budget plan. We always use this word that it's going to determine the insurance rates, and then we get some credits back. Is there ever to the finance department? Is there ever any calculation of what that actually is? Does anybody ever, like in our municipality, does it ever come out to an actual number, say that what it saves our community? I've never ever been told that. Heard it often.
I can speak to a little bit of that, and then if finance wants to chime in, that's great. So we're also in the process of updating our fire underwriter survey. And this is where they take into consideration all the things that we're doing in regards to fire prevention, station placement, apparatus updates, water sources and supplies and all that. And that establishes our rate for our area. And then it's usually, once the survey is done, all that information gets put out to the insurance companies, and hopefully they're going to be adjusting their rates. There are calculations and formulas out there that will provide us sort of a snapshot of the service we're providing and how that does impact the insurance rate and what the savings would be. We have presented that in our budget talks, I believe. I think first year I was here, we showed the correlation.
And yeah, and sorry, I've heard that before. You know, there's always this correlation and that, but I always want to know, what does it actually, because the interest on 946,000 is going to be 50,000 a year at 5%. So,
Or is this
sorry,
just comment
Is it
period
question?
now? Because we have.
I actually, I know, I want to know what a question, if there's a finite number that we actually save by buying a fire truck. Or if there,
I can show you insurance costs per household based on what we're offering.
thank you. I'm in support of buying a fire truck, but I just always, we always get it as a presentation, we're actually saving money by doing this. I just always want to know that. Thank you.
So I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Next up is 2170 and 2172 French Road residential strata conversion. Over to Mr. Riley.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so this agenda item is in regard to an application for residential strata conversion at 2170 and 2172 French Road South. For site context, the subject property is 600 square meters located on the corner of French Road South and Larkspur Road. The site contains an existing duplex with one half occupied by the owner applicant and the other vacant. The property is zoned medium density or medium lot residential R2 and has a land use designation of community residential. Adjacent land uses include R2 in the form of single-family duplex dwellings to the north, east, south, and west. This application is proposing a residential strata conversion of the existing duplex. Due to the duplex being previously occupied, the owners are required to obtain approval from council as the approving authority to stratify in accordance with section 242 of the Strata Property Act and District Policy 8.6. Strata conversion would allow the duplex to be sold as individual units as opposed to a two-unit dwelling. Based on the applicant's letter of rationale, they're seeking to sell one half and remain living in the other. District Policy 8.6 provides a framework related to the residential strata conversion of previously occupied dwellings. As noted in the policy, the first step in the process is for an applicant to be granted approval in principle from the approving authority, which may include conditions that the applicant must satisfy prior to final approval. Approval in principle provides a level of assurance to the applicant prior to incurring costs associated with any conditions subject to final approval of the strata conversion, which must be satisfied within 1 year. Under section, oh, sorry. Skip that here. No. Okay, under section 242 of the Strata Property Act and District Policy 8.6, the approving authority must evaluate an application for strata conversion by considering the following. The priority of rental accommodation over privately owned housing in the area, any proposals for the relocation of persons occupying a residential building, life expectancy of the building, projected major increases in maintenance, a cost due to the condition of the building, and any matters that in its opinion are relevant. So staff can confirm that policy 8.6 prohibits stratification of apartments or townhouses to mitigate more significant impacts to the rental stock. Based on the low number of applications received for residential strata conversion, the impact to the rental housing stock in this case is considered to be negligible. The proposed duplex is occupied by the owner and the other half is vacant. Therefore, tenant relocation is not required here. Also, the duplex was constructed in 2015 and in good condition according to a recent inspection that was approved by our building department. Policy 8.6 also notes the following technical requirements that may be subject to approval of a strata conversion. This includes BC Building Code compliance report prepared by an architect or other qualified professional. This has been provided and approved by the building department. septic servicing requirements, which is not applicable here due to the existing connection of public sewer, and compliance with servicing standards and requirements, which can include frontage improvements, which staff are recommending. So staff have prepared a schedule of conditions attached to the report as attachment 7, which outlines the recommended conditions associated with approval in principle. This includes frontage improvements to the local urban suburban cross section as a condition of strata conversion, either as constructed or cash in lieu. This condition would need to be addressed prior to final approval of the strata conversion within 1 year of approval in principle. The local urban suburban cross section that would apply in the case of these frontage improvements includes a 4.25 wide travel lane, 2.75 meter wide boulevard, a 2 meter wide sidewalk, 1 street tree, and street lighting. As noted in the applicant's rationale, they are requesting that the requirement for frontage improvements is removed as a condition. The applicant's rationale argues that there's no need for increased services at this location. Frontage works would be inconsistent with adjacent properties, and the condition would result in a significant cost. An alternate motion has therefore been included for council's consideration that reflects the applicant's request, should council choose to waive the frontage condition. Also importantly to note is that in the case of the alternate motion, there would be no other conditions associated with strata conversion. So council would be able to give final strata plan approval if they did choose that route. And staff's recommendation here is that council grant approval in principle for the strata conversion, and that that council directs staff to work with the owner to finalize the requirements as outlined in the conditions of strata conversion attachment 7 prior to final approval of the strata plan, or down below the alternate motion in the applicant's preference, which would be that council grant approval of the strata title conversion of previously occupied dwellings on the property, and that council authorize the mayor to sign the application deposit plan for strata plan EPS 9341. This concludes my presentation, and we also have the applicants available here for questions. Thank you.
Questions from council? Councillor St. Pierre.
Through the chair to staff. I'm curious about, I was taking a look at the road itself. A lot of the property nearby seem to be quite large and with older homes. In terms of the TMP and so on and so forth, how quickly are we anticipating build out or redevelopment and any potential improvements to that road?
Not to speak for Mr. Carter here, but through the chair, I guess it would be difficult to anticipate when future development of this area would be triggered, given the provincial requirements for the small scale multi-unit housing that would be permitted here. And also there's some changes to our subdivision development standards bylaw and requirements for frontage improvements as a condition of building permit. Perhaps Mr. Carter could add to that.
No, Mr. Riley has captured it pretty correctly. It's hard for us to anticipate timeframe for people making development applications, especially with the new legislation that's come into place. Yeah, so it would be recommended by staff to do frontage improvements or to compensate for cash in lieu, because there's no timeline associated with putting that forward for the improvements for the whole road.
Thank you very much for that.
Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, so through you to Mr. Carter, now next Monday at the Committee of the Whole, we will be receiving a workshop on the TMP road frontage cross sections. And of course, can you give us a preview of what that will entail?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Bateman. So we're going to go through a workshop with Urban Systems and myself. Urban Systems is going to be presenting on sort of logistics needs, how the TMP was created, importance and relevance of the different cross sections. And then we're going to be sort of looking at what we've seen in relation of council's desires with sort of variances that are supported in specific neighborhoods, a lot of them being in the Silver Spray area as well as the Gatewood residential area. So what we're looking at is through my report, we'll be sort of looking at presenting council with an option for consideration that could address a lot of the concerns where we're seeing a lot of these variances. So the option will be presented to council. We're also looking for council's feedback on the education component, as well as the option that we would put forward for council's consideration to sort of amend or put forward for future amendments to the TMP. Following that, it's welcome to hear like all council's input if we need to sort of come up with a creative solution that builds on or is in alignment with the one that we're presenting. But most of our most of the challenges we're finding are within the Gatewood residential area, as well as the Silver Spray area for primary variances. And sort of a snapshot of the solution would be look at maybe council considering reclassifying the service level for those areas in terms of a rural standard, and then presenting an additional rural cross section that is in alignment with the existing rural one, but also adds a little bit of a flavor to what sort of maintains more of a rural feel and still achieves safety, active transportation, and sort of fulfills all the requirements of the intent of a TMP. So looking forward to that meeting. The changes to a suburban local road cross section, we would not be recommending any changes sort of on this side of the bridge, because that's not where we're seeing the issues, and we would not be recommending any changes to the TMP or bylaw 404 for this side of the bridge. Our main focus would be based on the history of where we're seeing the variances that are supported and kind of the desire of council for those neighborhoods. And primarily it's the Gatewood residential as well as the Silver Spray area that have been subject to variances over the last few years.
So this application is very much not quite town center, but it's certainly urban Sooke. And what we'll learn next Monday will not impact the decision we make tonight. It might. So I guess the question is, are we a week too early or a couple of weeks too early to make a decision tonight?
Unless council has a desire to look at changing the areas that we're sort of not seeing as the problematic area for subject to variances. We're not seeing it in these areas in the town center on this side of the bridge in the suburban areas. So our solution, as well as any of our recommendations, would not be in alignment with making any adjustments to cross sections within this area.
So one of the comments that we've received from the applicant is that other homes which have been redeveloped over the last shorter period of time, 5 years, they have not been required to do the complete street build out. Can you, I know we discussed this whenever that was, 6 weeks ago, or?
So yeah, I could comment on that one, like sort of past the 5-year mark, prior to 5 years ago, the TMP wasn't in place. And I think there has been challenges with, I can't speak to it, it's all before my time, but I would say with the inconsistencies of how frontage improvements in alignment with bylaw 404 have been implemented or supported for variances. But our goal is to find something that falls in alignment with council's desire, the community's vision, and that is applied consistently to everyone. So going forward, I would say that's what we're looking for. Something that achieves safety, achieves the long-term vision of the community, is supported by the public as well as council. And that's what we'll be putting forward and discussing for potential solutions and recommendations on Monday.
There was a similar variance to this that we approved a few weeks back. That's about a block to the north of where we're sitting right now. It was turned down on Roshi. No, it wasn't. What's that? Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, it's I think that, you know, to Councillor Bateman's point, I think that there's an issue around, you know, what are we going to hear at the transportation master plan, and what input are we going to have from this side of the table? you know, I just heard it through you to the engineer, you know, this side of the bridge is pretty, a pretty big envelope. You know, there's a lot of rural roads, Phillips Road, Ella Road, there's a lot of roads. I went and looked at this house on the weekend and then did a drive around Sooke and found several interesting sidewalks from nowhere to nowhere, without the cross section in front of the road. Or the road not being matching the sidewalk. If you go up Caldwell Road, I don't know how far up that is before it turns into Pauliot Crescent. There's a sidewalk. It goes in front of about 2 or 3 houses, but it actually is now degrading and it doesn't look very well. So there's several of them around. The problem I have with this particular one, and I don't want to go against the transportation master plan, is this is an existing house, fairly new, 2015, I think was the date that it was built. We're not adding anything to that neighborhood in a way of density or building out. This is already built. This is an existing building. So I have trouble and I want to say that not looking at the alternative motion in this particular case, because it's a standalone duplex that's been built, been sitting there. The density is not changing as a result of this. This property is not going to develop anymore. I don't know about the other ones around it. I don't know. And I don't know what the solution could possibly be with regards to the transportation master plan that's going to address all of this. Do we implement it everywhere or do we create some variances, which is kind of the way I'm leaning on this particular project.
Councillor St. Pierre.
I took a look at the street, and as I mentioned before, some of the lots are very large. They've got older homes. They're going to be ripe for redevelopment in terms of what the province is putting forward. There's going to be more people coming in. I also saw people walking on the side of the road, no street lights, no sidewalks. That's something the community is pretty much screaming for. Our plans, like the TMP is a plan, our plans are basically meant to take the vision of the community and of council, but mostly the vision of the community, and actually realize them into reality. That's what the plans are for. If we don't actually make use of the tools that we have available, and one of the few tools we have available, because we know that property taxes are a limited tool, grants from the government, we don't know if we're going to get them. DCCs don't pay for this anyway. So in terms of sidewalks and streetlights, which the community is screaming for, especially in areas like this, which are lots of people and potentially more density, we don't have that many tools. We can either raise property taxes, and that's a tough pill to swallow. People are getting more frustrated with that all the time. Or we can make use of when someone actually does a rezoning, a strata development, and they're looking at making some money. And that's what this is all about. It's about the only time that we can actually try and pay for some of this stuff. Now, I'm not saying that I wouldn't give the variance. I'm just saying in terms of what we're trying to do, our current conditions right now do not reflect what the future is likely to be in that neighborhood. And people are going to want sidewalks and streetlights and so on and so forth. And we're going to be on the hook to provide it without any means. I don't know. The density is going to change most likely. So there you go. I'm just putting it out for information. I would prefer cash in lieu if we're looking at a standalone sidewalk personally. That may not be as large a cost, and it would actually allow us to put full sidewalks in somewhere else. I would much prefer something like that. In terms of the streetlights, I think the safety thing really has to be considered. A lot of people are not safe on our roads because they could get run over at night. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And there's no sidewalk, so they ought to be on the road.
Councillor McMath.
People are screaming for sidewalks and lighting in high traffic areas. They're not screaming for in the more rural sections that include past the bridge here. In fact, lots of them are screaming to shut the lights off that have been installed. And I don't think that it is a fair statement to say just because there are older homes in that area, combined with a provincial mandate, that means all of those homeowners are going to demo those homes, apply for building permits, and turn around and make this gigantic profit. People in those homes are probably the same people that are struggling to pay a mortgage. So I think it is unfair to essentially block an applicant because of something that there's no way for you to qualify. There's no way for you to know. And if anything, I would argue with the opposite direction. Those are single family residences who are getting hit the hardest right now. So to forecast is not reasonable, and it's definitely not fair to try to forecast and hold that against an applicant. It is difficult because I agree with you. We're in this difficult position when these pieces come forward, and what do you take? Do you have that homeowner that is not a developer take this large financial hit to have a sidewalk that could be the road to nowhere for the next 20 years? Or do you ask for that, as we have created in the language of our policies, and that save us the hardship in the future? That's the dilemma that we're having. And so when we're triaging emergencies, which is, there's these financial emergencies that people are having right now, I lean in these cases more towards the financial challenge of the homeowner who is trying to retire, not that maybe in 20 years piece, and perhaps that may be deemed short-sighted in some aspects, but again, it's the triaging of emergencies. So for me, at this point, I'm leaning towards the alternative motion.
Councillor St. Pierre.
A few things that you said. Well, first of all, we're not blocking because we're looking at moving forward. So it's not blocking. Unfair. It's actually really a question of the present versus the future. Are we being unfair to future taxpayers and people that have needs? Or we're being unfair to someone who stands to make a profit at this moment in time? And this is the only time we can actually make this stuff happen. So what is unfair? In terms of whether or not the area will be developed, large properties, people have trouble paying their ways, and a huge amount of money on the table to basically redevelop. The profit motive is strong. I wouldn't force anyone to sell their home, but there's a good chance people are going to want to make some money. They generally do, especially when things are hard. Forecasting is not reasonable. It's actually our job. We're supposed to forecast. We're supposed to figure out as best we can with planners and engineers what we're likely to have to deal with. And then we're supposed to try and get the tools and try and make it happen. It's our job to forecast. It's not unreasonable. Anyway, just a few things that were kind of bothering me.
Councillor Beddoes and then McMath.
Yeah, again, this is another mixed one, and that's why we need to have a look next week. And I think it might vary a little bit more than just this side of the bridge. I am torn to this one because I certainly understand what Councillor St. Pierre is saying, and I lean towards that way. Is we have to take these opportunities when we can. But I guess in this one, there's always an exception to the rule. And this specific dwelling is already a duplex. There's nothing going to change other than the ability to sell it, strata it, rather than a rental. So it doesn't take anything away from the community, doesn't add anything to the community. So normally I would sort of fight it tooth and nail that we stick really stringently to 404. But in this particular case, I'm inclined to do the alternate because it's just the technicality if so they can sell it, but it doesn't add another dwelling. It doesn't subtract another dwelling. It's the same street. You won't even notice it. So, but that doesn't say that we don't have some problems with the transportation master plan. And we need to have a look at where some of these areas and really work it out as to what we can do, like compensation cash in lieu of some of these ones that are similar to this. Maybe that could be worked out. But I think right now with that particular building and what the owner wants to do with it, I don't have a great deal of problem with it. It sort of goes against my grain for some of the other things which I fought for. But again, there's always an exception to the rule, and I think this might be one of them. So.
Councillor McMath.
Thank you, Councillor Beddoes. I meant to touch on that and I didn't. I should clarify my language. Speculating is the better term. So I could speculate that those homeowners, if they sell for development, where are they going to go? There's nowhere to go. There's not enough of an increase of profit for them to suddenly own this gigantic, like there's no, that profit margin that you're talking about is not applicable here. So what I was trying to say was that trying to speculate either way is not relevant to what's happening here and shouldn't be held against applicants or staff, depending on like which direction the motions are coming forward.
Counselor Bateman.
Well, thanks everyone for this great conversation. As ever, I'm torn here. I find, I think one of the things next week, it would be important to note, can we look one day at an urban suburban local cross section that doesn't include a concrete sidewalk and this non-mountable curb and gutter, and instead looks at more creative, I think the applicant believes this will cost at least $50,000 to $60,000. If it could be some sort of permeable or chip trail or some alternate approach that could become a norm along that street, as it does slowly but surely over time develop. You know, the French Road will be connected through to Beaton in due course, so it will become more of a corridor. Yeah, so it's challenging. 2 weeks ago, we were talking about Silver Spray, and 3 of us voted to keep to get that very kind of trail way out in the middle of nowhere across the strait. And 3 said, no, we need to build out according to this urban suburban local cross section. So I will just note that I drove by the residence about 6:30 tonight. There were 4 cars in the driveway, in the 2 driveways. There were also 2 or 3 cars in front of the property. It got pretty busy. A gentleman was across the street doing some work on his car. It got pretty narrow through there. So I can absolutely see staff's logic in wanting this. So I'll make my decision a little later.
Is there, just, I have a question. Is there a mechanism whereby we can accept cash in lieu in these situations to make improvements elsewhere? Or so something, give it to the food bank, I don't know.
Well, we're gonna have to look at bringing back something that would probably be through the development cost charge bylaw. That it's a big undertaking. Typically, when cash in lieu is taken, it is taken to be utilized in that area. And that's similar to how Mr. Riley alluded to. It's an option for this area. Someone's developing, if council doesn't like to see sidewalks to nowhere, there's mixed opinions on those things, but ultimately cash in lieu of doing the frontage improvements, we'll put money in the bank, and progressively, if the street develops periodically over time, there will be some money there. There won't be enough money to maybe build out the full cross section. And in 20 years, if you've had sort of scattered development on that street, there might be enough money to address, say, like bit of a hybrid. You're not doing the full cross section, but maybe you can go put up a sidewalk, or maybe you can expand the pavement width a little bit and go up in the street. But if cash in lieu is not taken, and frontage improvements are not secured with the mechanisms local governments have, the ultimate cost when those roads need to get rebuilt will go on to the future taxpayers, high income, low income, retired, everybody. So we try to put forward sort of the best options for the long-term view of the community. And these views, typically from our perspective, we try and follow the rules and everything that's in best practice. So it's an ultimately achieving the long-term vision of the community And I understand there's a lot of hard decisions in terms of developments and individual applicants, but when we look at these things, we try and look at them from a technical basis and take out of the decision factor, who owns the property, what they're trying to do with the property, what profit margins might be available from people developing, but what is the plan for the community and what's the long-term goal to achieve? And that's typically achieved by securing frontage improvements where the mechanisms are available. But ultimately, it's council's ultimate decision and policy framework that leads us to bring these forward.
Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, through the chair, to Mr. Carter, I'm still a little confused because you say there is a mechanism that we could ask for some cash in lieu to be banked for future development on that street. So if I'm looking at these two alternatives we have before us, if we go to the second one, the alternative, there's no opportunity for that. If we go to the first one with direction from council to work out a cash in lieu, you know, if you think it's 70,000 to build a sidewalk and we take 30 or whatever, doesn't matter. Which one of these motions which lean to a cash in lieu?
So just to clarify, cash in lieu should always be in alignment with the required cross-section build out. It shouldn't be negotiated value down to partial, because you're going to have, council's going to have a lot of challenges going forward, basically doing different things for different people, and it has to be done consistently. So if cash in lieu is an option that council would like to consider as opposed to a build out, it should be a design put forward with an estimate that's in alignment with the community's plan, and whatever that estimate is should be the amount that's taken in cash.
Wow. It's a tough one because we're you know, when we look at the one over at Silver Spray, that's a development. That's, you know, 9 or 11 lots. It's different than just somebody, you know, strategizing their residence that was rental on one side. But I understand what you're saying. Somewhere down the line, there will need to be sidewalks in that area. And there will have to, it will go through French, will cut through eventually, I suspect. So it's a tough one. I don't know if this is something that we put on hold until we have our discussion. I think Councillor Bateman was leading to that. Or we just make another decision and this one stands and then have a different policy coming out of next week. We certainly need to have a look at it. And at this point in time, I'm more inclined to put this, table this one until we have our discussion, and we can, because it's not just going to affect this person. You know, we say we don't set precedents, but exactly what we are doing is setting precedent. So, I mean, I think we better have a good hard look at that transportation master plan that, you know, we didn't foresee this problem, and figure out what we and the community wants. So I'm not very happy with moving ahead with either of these at this time.
I'm gonna go to staff.
Just a quick question for me through the chair, or a comment. So just a consideration for council is that just the timeline of this bylaw being adopted, it may not be something that occurs overnight. So this would be, you know, significantly delaying the applicant and getting their strata conversion. Secondly, potentially an alternative option for council to consider would be to modify the language in the resolution to say that frontage improvements would be required as per the transportation master plan. So whatever that results from the workshops or potentially any bylaw amendments, it could be modified if there is a change as a result of that meeting.
And sorry, just one more thing to add to it. So we're going into a workshop that's gonna look at components of the transportation master plan. Amending a transportation master plan or creating it it should go through the same major public consultation process. So what the purpose of this workshop is to look at a few components of the transportation master plan, and specifically the ones that are being problematic, and see what potential solutions and changes that would entail. And what that's going to do, and what we're looking for council's direction to do, is to take those desired changes and direct staff to put those into the changes in the subdivision and development standards bylaw that is in a draft format right now, that we can basically put these changes into that bylaw, which is the tool, which is the piece that holds them to these requirements. And that will go through the proper consultation process this summer. Any changes that are sort of reflected in that bylaw 404 and that we've identified in the TMP, we're going to have to look at those in out years, whether next year or the year after, in a major sort of redo or revision of the TMP. So the ultimate goal is to look at what areas are being problematic based on the last few years, and to identify those in the TMP, but to make the updates into 404. The recreation or amending the transportation master plan will be quite a lengthy process, and it wouldn't be, we'd be looking to do that in out years. We're just looking for the initial changes in 404, which is the tool. And ultimately, the one in front of council tonight is a strata conversion, and it's council's policy that gives them the authority as the approving officer to require these improvements. So it's ultimately council's decision on this piece, whether they would want to require them to do the improvements or not to do the improvements. But that's the purpose of the workshop on Monday.
Councillor St. Pierre.
Okay, so I think one of the things you said, hard decision, absolutely hard decision. Question that you have though for staff is around this whole thing that Councilor Beddoes was asking about, which is the cash in lieu. Because as far as I'm concerned, there's a lot of uncertainty, at least in my mind, about what that could actually mean. You mentioned that DCCs could be used, but then they have to be used in a specific space and a specific location. I think the vision of council, or at least my own particular vision, I can't speak for all of council actually, was that we might be able to collect cash in lieu and then go to, for example, the next highest priority area that was meant to have sidewalks and put in the sidewalks. With the understanding that even though we've talked about standalone projects, as we're building out a community, nothing is really standalone. And if we're building out, for example, more sidewalks along Grant Road or along, to the Prestige, it actually serves the entire community in some ways. Everybody wants to use the sidewalks in the town center, even if they don't exist. Are there any tools at all that we could potentially use or develop to collect monies towards going towards our actual priorities in terms of sidewalks and streetlights and road improvements and frontage improvements?
Sorry, just point of order. It's so valuable and it's really pertinent, but we're just supposed to be discussing this strata conversion, not these two civics. So
Can't modify this resolution unless I have an answer to this question.
But you already have an answer to the question. We don't do that. You're asking for a solution to the problem that you foresee as us not being able to do that, which is not what we're doing right now.
I would prefer to get a staff answer on this.
Through the chair to Councillor St. Pierre, there's currently no tools right now. Is there tools available that can be used? There's very few municipalities that are doing it and exploring it because it's very challenging to do. And it would have to go through like a major revision, I believe, of the DCC program in general. Like doing something like that would create specific service areas for a large area, Sooke, meaning anyone developing in those areas. Not only would they be required to do their frontage improvements, they would also be required to pay an additional fee on top of required stuff to go into a general sidewalk fund per se that could be used anywhere else within that service area. It's quite complex. There's a lot of moving pieces to it, and it would not be a tool that could be put in place overnight. It would be through the course of a year or a major update to a DCC program in its entirety, I believe.
Okay, so the answer is no.
No, not right now. No.
There we go.
So in the interest of consistency, since the last, we had one very similar to this, as I mentioned earlier, about a block to the north of here. The applicant was in the room and we allowed that variance and we didn't require them to make the frontage improvements. And I think until we have this updated transportation master plan, I think we should stick with that. I know I'm very familiar with this particular neighborhood. There has been a lot of construction happening there. There's some new construction and nowhere has there been sidewalks. And it just, it doesn't make sense to me to have one piece of sidewalk that's not gonna connect to anything.
Sorry, just a point of clarification. So the previous strata residential conversion application that came through here for Cameron, it is not what you're referring to?
What's the name of the street? It's no. It's just right over here in is it Beaton subdivision or Eakin? Eakin, I think it was on Eakin. Counselor McMath.
These are really challenging. Sorry, just so you know, my phone's on silent. There's only one person that can get through it. And so apologies. I do think this property is an anomaly in this situation, and considering it is only a strata conversion, and we have plans to address the challenges that we're continually facing in here, which makes staff lives very difficult as well. I'm just going to proceed with the motion. And that is that council grant approval for the strata title conversion of the previously occupied dwellings on the property legally described as Lot A, Section 22, Sooke Land District Plan EPP 32102, 2170 and 2172 French Road, and that council authorize the mayor to sign the application to deposit plan for strata plan EPS 9341.
Any discussion? Counselor St. Pierre.
I feel like we have touched on all of the points here. This is a bit of an anomaly. It is closer to the core, but it is just a strata conversion. I know this is an opportunity to leverage that infrastructure, but with all the competing issues that are going on, and no way to, what's the word I was using? It could be 20 years, it could be 5 years. We don't know that. So that's irrelevant to this conversation. But for me, this one's an anomaly. So I'm comfortable with the alternative motion.
Counselor Pearson.
Yeah, and I will support the motion. Because it's an existing building. It's not changing the current density, and everything that you said is true. It's just that it's already there. It's already existing. I struggle with these ones, and I think this is where we need to bring that forward in our strat plan as well as the transportation master plan, is we have to remember these anomalies. And I mean, hopefully, and I really appreciate staff is saying that it is why we're reviewing it, because these anomalies pop up from time to time. So this just seems to be one of those. Thank you.
Sorry, Counselor St. Pierre.
So the easy decision here is actually to vote in favor of the variance, because quite frankly, we've got people here, and they're real people right in front of us, and they're having their troubles, and they're trying to make their way, and that's the easy decision. The hard decision is actually to go with the plan that the community made and to follow this sort of thing. I happen to agree that this may be slightly different, but the fact is a lot of stuff are anomalies, and almost everyone feels that their situation is particularly different. And if we actually just throw the plan under the bus every time that happens, our plans aren't really worth much, and we're not going to get to where we want to go with our transportation master plan. Having said all that, I can see more or less where this is going, and I really appreciate the conversation that we've had today, because it's allowed us to talk about all this stuff. I think that there's a need here for council to actually ideally come into alignment and understand that there's no such thing, honestly, as a standalone development. It's all part of it, build out of a community. And we're trying to build communities, not actually deal with individual units. That's why the rules are actually meant to cover lots of things and move towards a plan and forecast the future and all that good stuff. And I'm glad we had a chance to talk about that, but I will be opposing.
Counselor Beddoes.
Yeah, it is very, very difficult, but I think the fact that it is already a duplex, there's no changes, and it is a one-off in a lot of respects. And hopefully we can, in the next while or even years, get this ironed out. But I think in this particular case, I will support the motion with some reservations. And it does, I am worried about the future and, you know, 10 years, 20 years down the road when you're trying to push a street through and then you're going to go to everybody and that wants sidewalks. So, yeah. Anyways, I will support it with great reluctance.
Counselor Bateman?
Yeah, I'll be supporting with reservations as well. So hopefully this is the last time we'll throw the plan under the bus, put it that way. And then we will move into positive directions in future, but it's true, this is hopefully the end of an era.
Okay, so I'm gonna call the question. All in favor? And Counselor St. Pierre is opposed. Moving right along. Oh, do we need another health break?
Too much water.
Okay, where are we? Request for funds from the Sooke Arts Reserve Fund.
Thank you. So staff are seeking council support to use funds from the Sooke Arts Reserve Fund to acquire and install two art pieces in collaboration with Sooke Nation artist Shelley Davies. The works are inspired by Davies' icon designs for Ravens Ridge Park and the Sooke Potholes Gateway. The animals inspiring the icons were selected by members of the Sooke Nation to celebrate the connection to land and its wildlife. Staff believe that creating standalone art from these icons will effectively communicate this significance. More specifically, the raven symbolizes intelligence, creativity, and transformation, fitting for Ravens Ridge Park, where knowledge and teachings of sport are shared. The black bear embodies strength, wisdom, and spiritual connection to nature, highlighting its role as a guardian of the river ecosystem. Further, this initiative aligns with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action concerning language and culture, supporting the revitalization and preservation of Indigenous languages. Integration of Sinchafan language into such displays has been approved by the Sooke Nation. Related initiatives identified in the report, not requiring a resolution by council should you support this proposal, are a ceremonial or artist acknowledgement of the installations pending support or direction from the Sooke Nation, and the development of a digital public art walk. The digital public art walk is in alignment with our community economic development strategy. It would allow our community to better recognize and celebrate the numerous works already installed in the community, along with the new mural under development for the town core, set to be installed in the coming weeks. Specific to budget, fabrication and installation costs for the works are outlined in the report, a total of $25,000, which also includes contingency, landscaping, and allotment for the annual maintenance. I'll note that after this initiative, should it be supported, and the already approved Quimper Park Memorial Wall, $77,000 will remain in the Spa Reserve Fund. There are no direct costs associated with the digital public art walk, apart from the staff time from myself and GIS. And with that, I'll leave you with the recommendations on the screen, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Council questions? Counselor McMath?
I was gonna make the motion if there weren't any questions.
Okay.
Okay, recommendation that staff direct council to proceed with the installation of the bear and raven icons as outdoor public art. That council directs staff to use a maximum of $20,000 from the Spa Reserve Fund for this purpose. And that council directs staff to use a maximum of $5,000 from the Spa Reserve Fund annually for the ongoing maintenance and care of the public art installations.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. I don't know if there's any need for discussion here, so I'm going to call the question.
Well, hold on. I just wanted to thank staff for making this bold new, moving ahead. I think the mural, we did get funding from the spa, the mural at Cedar Grove Mall got funding out of the reserve fund. And Shelley Davies is a magnificent artist, and her work and Diego's and others in the community will all be linked by this digital public arts walk, which is a you'll be able to take your phone, I believe, and go on a art tour of Sooke. So it's great work being done here. Thank you.
I agree. And, okay, so I'm gonna call the question now. How's that? All in favor? That's unanimous. Development procedures bylaw. And we have a report, I believe.
Just waiting for the presentation. Yeah, great. So this agenda item is in regard to the draft development procedures bylaw and direction received from the committee of the whole on April 29th, 2024. The draft procedures bylaw is one of the items being addressed under the UBCM funded development approval process review project. The DAPR project includes improving timelines, cost effectiveness, transparency, and level of service standards as it relates to development approval processes at the district. The procedures bylaw itself specifically seeks to consolidate related bylaws information, incorporate legislative changes, streamline and strengthen development processes, and align with recommended best practices. On April 29th, staff sought direction from the committee of the whole on various components of the draft development procedures bylaw to help guide any changes prior to readings taking place. At the meeting, the committee of the whole directed staff's return to the following council meeting, specifically in regard to motion number 4, to clarify the proposed changes between the current bylaw and the draft bylaw. Motion number 4 is related to the scope of delegated authority allotted to the Director of Planning and Development to issue or amend development permits. This slide includes a direct comparison between the existing development permit delegation bylaw and the draft procedures bylaw. The existing bylaw language is located within the left column and the draft bylaw on the right column. The specific language that differs between the two are highlighted in red. Changes to the proposed draft bylaw include consolidating some language of single and multifamily residential to residential developments for the delegation of development permits outside of the town center. Also, the inclusion of language that notes when the director may or is required to refer an application to council, even if it meets the criteria for delegated approval. As noted, this is either when it's determined to be in the public interest to do so, or a variance is required that must be considered by council, or in other words, not a minor variance that could otherwise be delegated as per the draft bylaw. This is the same comparison table, but only with those sections subject to change. As with the last slide, motion number 5, which was supported by the committee of the whole, is included to give context to the changes in 4A1 of the existing bylaw as it relates to exemptions. So in summary, again, what's proposed is to consolidate 4A and B and to clearly outline when an otherwise delegated development permit would be referred to council. In conclusion, as it relates to motion number 4, no major changes to delegated authority for issuing or amending development permits is being proposed. Therefore, it's recommended that council direct staff to amend the draft bylaw according to the recommended motion, motion 4. Following this direction, staff would return to council with the procedures bylaw for readings to be considered in its entirety. The staff recommendation and motion number 4 is again presented here. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Questions from council? Councillor McMahon.
I just have one question. So there's a reference here. So the director would refer a delegated development permit to council when the proposed delegated development permit meets the criteria to be delegated to staff, but in the opinion of the director, it would be in the public's best interest instead to have the application considered by council. Can you give me an example of what that would look like?
Yeah, through the chair, I suppose this would be in the case where a proposal may be deemed to be somewhat contentious or worthy of gaining some public format or being reviewed or considered through council format, exactly. Reasons would vary, I suppose, but I guess just off the top of my head, thinking if it would be potentially a contentious proposal that would otherwise meet the criteria. Perhaps from based on historical information, something to that effect.
Okay.
Anyone? Councillor St. Pierre.
Given that this seems to be, I think we were mostly wondering what are the actual differences, you know, legally speaking and so on and so forth. So we've got confirmation that there's not really differences just in terms of, you know, delegated powers, but that we're looking at changes in language. I'd like to move the motion and then we can further discuss. Yeah. Oh.
Councillor McMahon.
Did you consult with the building association at all with these amendments?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. No, we have not consulted with the building committee with this draft bylaw itself. But during the DAPR project, we did have consultation or engagement sessions with the development community.
And how did they speak to this?
The feedback that we're incorporating into the procedures bylaw is essentially looking at ways that we can find innovative ways to streamline approval processes. So that was the main factor of feedback that we received, and we feel that we've achieved this through the current draft.
Through this specifically?
Yeah, through this specifically. There's not much changes in terms of the delegated authorities, but through the minor development variance permits that are delegated as per the draft, at least. And some clarity with consolidation of other bylaws and whatnot, including all the schedules that you see in the attached draft document, does provide that transparency measure and also some opportunities for streamlining development approvals.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Pearson.
Yes, through the chair, just to Councillor McMath, at the committee of the whole, there was two representatives of the Sooke Builders Association, Mr. Haldane and Mr. McNaughton. They were kind of varying opinions. Mr. McNaughton saw the advantages in streamlining the processes, and Mr. Haldane wanted to lean more towards getting in front of council for discussion. So they did have, I think they both looked at the document sort of they took it apart. So yeah, there was a difference in opinion, but overall they saw it and they did have input. So at the committee of the whole. Thank you.
Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I'll also add that this new bylaw very explicitly states that an applicant can move on to council if they so wish. If they're not happy with the decision, then they can bring it to us. And also very glad to see that public interest is defined in the glossary. Now that's good, because that is an interesting expression. So it's in there. What has been lost is Schedule 12. Just take note that it's dropped out of the bylaw. You might want to put that back in, unless it's, yeah, caught that.
Councillor St. Pierre.
So, as I was suggesting, I could move the motion. The council directs staff to amend the draft development procedures bylaw in accordance with the following, referred to as motion number 4. The council delegates the authority to issue and amend development permits to the Director of Planning and Development for the following. A, all residential developments outside the town center as defined in the OCP. B, commercial, industrial, or institutional development with 2,500 square meters or less of gross floor area outside the town center as defined in the OCP. C, development permits required for the subdivision or alteration of land outside the town center. D, development permits required for the construction of addition to or alteration of a building or structure. And E, amendments to existing development permits that do not exceed the authority granted in A, B, C, or D. Not moved it.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Okay.
All right.
Moved by St. Pierre, seconded by Bateman.
I'll speak. to it.
Anything further?
I'll speak to it briefly. This doesn't actually change anything other than language around it from the sounds of things. So why not, right? Sorry, that's a little flippant. I think what we're doing is we're accomplishing the goals of the development approval process. We're trying to actually improve and streamline. So let's just get her done.
Counselor Bateman, anything?
No, I think we still have the right to deal with a wide range of items. If outside the town center, if it's a residential development with a phased development or a CD zone, it's still being dealt with by this council. So I think onwards.
Right, and the intent of this is to expedite the development approvals process, and we got a grant of $500,000 to pay for a consultant to provide us with these recommendations. And if for some reason they don't work to expedite the process, then we'll have to look at it again in the future. But for now, I'm happy to support this. So I'm gonna call the question. No, I'm not.
In the effort of trying to improve things, there's always a consequence to every decision you make. I'm not I will support the motion. I'm not super comfortable with that. And we talked about it at the committee of the whole in December when we had the meeting about the commercial industrial institution development with 2,500 square meters or less. I'm not sure that that was the right number for me personally, but we'll just have to go and see how it goes. I think there's some risk in that particular one bullet, which is B. Thank you.
There is still an opportunity for applicants to come before council.
Yeah, and I've already beleaguered my point about delays in the process.
Okay. Are we good? I'm gonna call the question then. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Next up is 11.2 Council Procedure Amendment Bylaw.
Thank you. Through the acting mayor to council, we are presenting this report as a summary of directions that staff have received in regards to procedure bylaw amendments. At its February 26th, 2024 meeting, council directed staff to prepare updates to the procedure bylaw as outlined in the staff report. At the March 11th meeting, council further directed staff to amend the committee of the whole adjourn time and adjust the start dates of the council open and in-camera meetings. And the intent of this was to streamline processes by potentially combining the special and regular meetings into a single session and eliminate the need for the third special meeting agenda. Staff have incorporated the committee of the whole adjourn time change into the proposed bylaw amendment as presented. However, in regards to the change to in-camera meetings, staff have sought legal advice in regards to the procedural complications with this, having the regular meeting start at 6 p.m. and adjourning immediately into an in-camera session would be problematic as meeting times must be consistent. And if we propose our open meeting to start at 6 p.m., we would always have to consistently open at 6 p.m. regardless of the fact if we had an in-camera meeting or not. And we would also need quorum to start that. It's a bit of a procedural maze, so I'm happy to walk through that again if you need. But speaking to the intent of council's initial direction is to streamline the processes in order to have one less agenda and just to be logistically more clear on how this on how council goes into in-camera. So to address this complication, staff would propose option 1 to modify the start time of the regular open meeting to begin at 6 p.m., handling all public matters in in the open meeting first, and then after the open meeting is finished, adjourn immediately into in camera. And this proposed approach would maintain our legal public meeting requirements, as well as simplify the administrative processes with one less agenda, one less set of minutes, and also would make meetings more predictable and logistically manageable for both council members and staff. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson.
And I appreciate why this is here, but so do I understand through the chair to you that all meetings would start at 6 p.m. then from if we make this adjustment?
Yes, that would be the proposed option one. And to that effect would eliminate one set of agenda, one set of minutes. As it stands currently, the status quo is we have a special meeting that has special notice provisions every single time we have an in-camera session, which one might argue also would not be the best as far as the public opportunity to witness us to have a motion to go in camera. The public is available to come at 6 p.m. as we have our open session before we go in camera. But historically, in most local governments, that happens after the end of our open session as the public is normally there during the open meeting. So sorry, to clarify, the proposed option one to streamline the processes would in fact change the regular meeting start time to 6 p.m. is what I'm proposing.
Okay. We've had traditionally had it at 7 p.m., right? Has been our meeting. And traffic has increased substantially for people who are working for a living, both the counselors, and I don't work anymore, but I know that it was difficult for me to get here by 6 o'clock. And I know members of the public who are working to that 5 p.m., like for the start of the regular meeting being at 6. It feels to me early, but I'll wait till my other fellow counselors comment. It's for us who live in Sooke, it's not that big of a deal. I'm not working, but for somebody who's working.
Councillor St. Pierre.
Yeah, I have some questions around this. So if I understand, we'd have all our regular meetings starting at 6, and then I would imagine we would resolve into in-camera automatically at 10 o'clock. If we're moving everything, or is it at 11 o'clock? Because I wouldn't want to start an in-camera at 11. That's not a good thing. I think everybody knows my opinions on that.
So as far as procedural goes, our in-camera would just be immediately following the regular meeting. So if we ended at 8:30, we would adjourn into in-camera. There wouldn't be a fixed start time. And ideally, shifting the open meeting portion 1 hour earlier would mean that we are adjourning our open session 1 hour earlier.
Okay. That sounds optimistic. I think we tend to fill as much time as we can with as much gavel as we can. Ow. Would the procedure bylaw include something to the effect, or could it include something to the effect of resolving into in camera on the days when we have in camera at 10 o'clock? So basically at that point, we would have 10 o'clock rolls around. That's when we stop so that we can do in camera. Is that something that can and should happen? Because otherwise I can absolutely see the regular meeting extending to 11, as it often does, even with the extra hour.
While technically feasible, I think that in practice, council would make motions to get around that. Look at our 11 p.m. Stop time or extension of delegations or public speakers. I find that even if a rules and a procedure bylaw, council does find the time to deliberate the items as they will. So I do understand the intention of what you're saying is to immediately go into in camera. But I would just suggest that council consider weighing that against the potential of having an open agenda item that has not been addressed. And council would have to make that hard decision at that time.
Thank you. Just put it out there.
I like this idea. I mean, the start time is the same. If we have an in-camera meeting, we start at 6 and we have a regular meeting to follow. So the length of time doesn't change, but there are times when our in-camera meetings take the full hour and then some. And personally, I know it's not all about me, but I have to leave the building, go outside and up a ramp that's not wheelchair friendly, really. Sometimes I have to leave the property to go out on the road to get here if people park and block the ramp. So for me, it works really well. I just thought I would add that. And Councillor Bate.
Yeah, good points all. I agree with Councillor Pearson about, you know, the difficulties of people getting here. I'm wondering whether, like our crosswalk survey, we could put out a survey saying, will 6 o'clock start time be a difficulty for large numbers of people? I think one of the upsides, as noted in the staff report, is that the staff sitting here right now could in fact kill less time between, you know, you'd start at 6, you'd be gone by 9:30 ideally tonight. And I guess there is a monetary value to your presence here. I don't know if you're getting overtime tonight, I believe. No, you're not. It's just straight time. Nonetheless, I wonder. Yeah, I can see. Yeah. So I also will note that back in the last term, we moved our committees of the whole to 7 o'clock out of respect to Councillor McMath and Councillor Logan's, both with day jobs. So one of us continues to have a day job. So that's of note.
Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I'd prefer a 6 o'clock start. You know, a lot of times we're through at 8:39. That would get us staff and us home a little bit earlier because I don't work well when 11 o'clock onwards. As for the Councillor Pearson's comment about people driving here, I'd be concerned when I see hordes of people waiting here every day for us. But I think on most days we're lucky if we have 1 or 2. And I'd be inclined to go with the 6 o'clock. And in 6 months' time, we get a lot of pushback from people complaining about it. We can go back to 7. So why don't we try this 6 o'clock? We can always change it. We always have that ability. And I think keeping our staff here longer than they need to be is really not fair to them. Keeping me here longer than I need to be is not really fair to me. So I'd like to try it.
If I may just comment as well, the procedure for adopting a procedure bylaw amendment does have a public notification aspect of it. So while council considers, before considering adoption of this bylaw, the community will be notified through statutory notice into newspaper ads as well. And council could have input from the public in regards to that before their final decision.
Perfect. Okay, I had 2, I think, ready to make a motion.
Yeah, I'll make the motion. That would be number
Moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Oh, sorry. Comments?
I do think this is the right direction. There are lots of municipalities that format their meetings the same way. For me, I work 6 to 6, 2 days, 2 nights. So for example, today I finish work at 6. I try to get coverage to get out early. And so Frank Camera can call in. So it will be different until a lot of the starts of these meetings. I will be on the phone in my vehicle until I get here. I do worry, especially for really important issues, but perhaps when cultivating the agenda, those important pieces can get pushed back to a slightly later time so that people that are stuck still in that traffic can still be captured in those moments, and we can look at that and we can revisit and do workarounds. But besides my own challenges that I'll have with this, I do think this is the right direction.
I agree. So I'm gonna call the question then, all in favor? All in favor? All of us, okay, so. Item 11.3, 2024 property tax rate bylaw.
It's just for adoption, so you can,
Okay,
unless you want any conversation.
okay, so. Counselor St. Pierre moves the motion,
The council adopt the bylaw cited as property tax bylaw number 907, 2024.
seconded by Counselor Bateman, all in favor? That is unanimous. Okay, no new business that I'm aware of. But we do have, yes, I don't.
Councilor Corporate Officer, where does the material that came out of the
Next.
Item 13, items
Oh, there we go.
removed from consent
Okay.
agenda. And which, that was the committee of the whole resolutions. Is that right?
Yeah, so
Record.
first, I propose we'll deal with 9.1 correspondence item 23F that Counselor Bateman wanted pulled.
That would be for discussion. Yeah. That would be for discussion at the next regular council.
At the next regular
Yeah,
council. Okay,
thank you.
perfect.
So we can all read it.
Okay, so then it is
So then the next slide.
9.2. Is it?
That's correct. And there is a number of recommendations that the committee of whole did make to council. That's in your agenda pack under 9.2. And I also have them on various slides here as well.
Okay. Counselor Meadows.
Yeah, since I'm the one that asked this to be pulled, there's just one area that I'm not happy with. And I know it was debated at committee of the whole, but there was a misunderstanding on my part, and that's delegation of authority, minor variances. And we just had an instance today, or Mr. Riley said that if this had passed, then these minor variances that we just dealt with for Telk or not Telk, what we just did today, anyways. Terra, that's it. Sorry, I get it mixed up. There's a definition of what's minor, because he's saying 4.5 setback to 2.3, 4.5 to 2.5, 4.5 to 3.2, 4.5 to 2.1 are minor, and therefore staff would make that. And I'm saying I'm not happy with that. I think anything that adjusts the property and the distance between their neighbors should come to us. So if there was a better definition of what minor meant, obviously I went away thinking, okay, if someone's got a setback of 5 meters and they want to drop it to 2 meters, it would come before us. But yet staff interprets it that if that same scenario would stay with staff. So obviously we're not on the same wavelength. So I'm not happy with that personally.
Counselor St. Pierre.
And as you might guess, I'm actually kind of happy with it, because what it means is that the applicants are going to actually get a streamlined process where they can actually get their answers more quickly. Staff has a lot of experience in terms of dealing with, what it might look like in the community, how it might affect people. They're going to keep a careful account of the correspondence and so on and so forth. Ideally, they're going to make good decisions with the OCP in mind, with all those documents in mind. It's not actually adding an extra, story. It's not a major variance. We're not looking at increasing density or removing frontages or whatever. We're looking at, setbacks. And there are times when there's no neighbors at all. We'd have an entire report come forward to council because we have to now. But that's exactly what we want to avoid. We want to actually avoid the extra work for staff, and we want to make it faster for the applicants. If there are problems, and if it's likely to be contentious, the director of planning with this stuff is supposed to bring it forward to us. If the applicant is not happy, they can still come forward to council to, get our take on it. But as previously mentioned during the committee of the whole, this is meant to speed things up. It's meant to stretch our resources as far as they can go. If we're actually creating more work in terms of bringing these minor variances to us, those are all reports that have to be written. That's all stuff that lands on the agenda. That's all extra time that has to be spent in these chambers to actually deal with things that could be dealt with by staff and make everybody happy.
Councillor Pearson.
Yeah. Oh. No, it's interesting because I started thinking about setbacks. Setbacks are created just like a transportation master plan. So now we've taken setbacks that have been designed and put into place in our bylaws for aesthetic reasons, safety reasons, fire break, all of those things. And I just somehow just kind of sitting here thinking, I'm not sure that's a minor variance. Altering setbacks, particularly and I get there's sometimes when the pie-shaped lot or whatever, those kind of things, and that's kind of, I'm struggling a little bit with that, actually. Agreeing with Councillor Beddoes.
Oh. Sorry.
Councillor McMahon.
So for tonight, it's just a receipt for info with recommendations. So I think some more
No,
this is just for the
it's for
photo.
adopt.
So then there are definitions that I would like as well, which is under the minor variances. It's the third bullet down under 6, and it says there is a valid reason for the variance request. Can you define valid?
Yeah, through the chair. So I suppose there would be a little bit of flexibility here on purpose for the director. If we do determine exactly what a valid reason means, I suppose we run the risk of backing ourselves into a bit of a corner, not including certain elements that potentially should be also included as in a director's consideration when determining if a minor development variance permit is required or not. So a valid reason would just essentially be, as it reads, I guess, rationale that is adequate from the perspective of our director.
So the problem with that is you say back into a corner, but I say clarity. So for an applicant that's going through this process, they may feel that this is valid to come forward to council, and someone may decide, I disagree. And so then what happens at that juncture?
Through the chair. Yes. So essentially this acts like a filter. So if there is, it's supposed to catch the low hanging fruit, essentially the easy applications that should be a straight shot and approved based on the guidelines and criteria that are outlined in the delegations procedures bylaw. In the case where there's a disagreement or where the director, feels it's potentially contentious because we've expanded the notification as well. So we do mail outs, we receive comments back from neighbors. If there's a sense that it's deserving of the public interest, et cetera, then the director can push to council. If the director decides that they want to deny the request, then there's an appeal process, and then the applicant can go to council and have it considered. So this is just essentially trying to catch the low hanging fruit here.
I appreciate that. I just want to play the devil's advocate here. So for that applicant who you guys are not coming to a consensus on whatever, and they find they have a valid reason, it is disagreed upon by the district. No, you don't. How long does this application process typically take?
Through the chair, not long at all. Essentially, it would be known right at the onset if an application would be considered for development variance permit through delegated authority, or if it should be pushed to council. In that case, if the application comes in, it's known that it's not a reasonable or a valid reason, et cetera. It can be known pretty quickly that it's going to be pushed to council.
define pretty quickly. Where I'm going with this too is
Yeah.
that so.
No delay.
So you're technical, we are like the conduit for the community. And so questions that we are going to get hit with are the concern over pieces like the one I just brought up. So giving, it's kind of like the two that came from the Builders Association. You have two perspectives on pieces like this. So the one is great, this creates efficiencies. This is going to help the building and growing community and people get into homes quicker. The other perspective on this is that it is taking power away from council, who is supposed to be the community voice, and giving all of that power to staff, who then dictate the terms for everything with loose definitions that are interpreted by the district in one way and by the community another way. And so I'm not saying that I agree with it, heavy sire, but those are the questions that come to us, and those are the approaches that we get for that. So that's to have that discussion now, is having transparency on the intentions and clarification around definitions. That is the purpose.
Counselor St. Pierre.
Sorry, I was just waiting for an answer.
We discussed this at length
At
during the
length.
committee of the whole. And we're kind of reiterating all of that now. So I'm gonna let Counselor St. Pierre.
First, I'd like to apologize for the upset. But I was really frustrated. Okay, sorry about that.
It happened.
What I wanted to talk about was this valid reasons. Basically, the valid reasons and the example that was given in the committee of the whole was if, for example, a foundation was off by, I think, 2 inches or 2 centimeters. The director of planning could then say, we're good, let's issue the permit, we're good. Or, let's go for it. It's meant to allow enough latitude that if it isn't specifically laid out, you can do this. Then if it looks like perfectly reasonable and logical and so on and so forth, it doesn't come to council that goes, well, yeah, no shit. So it's basically giving that latitude. And what it means is that if someone has, for example, their foundation off by 2 centimeters, they can basically get themselves pushed through the process more quickly, because that's a low-hanging fruit. It's a no-brainer, except that the rules don't allow the director of planning to actually permit that without taking it to council right now. So that's the reason behind having the language that's not very specific, because if some unknown thing that we haven't thought of comes up, that is really obvious, the director of planning has the ability to say, yes, go ahead and get this. Any issues that anytime that someone comes up with a valid reason they consider valid and the director of planning doesn't consider valid, it will come before council. So it still comes to us. We're not actually giving up any power to deal with difficult decisions. The difficult decisions will still come to us.
There's time delays and consequences to those pieces. So I just.
No, the time delay, that's a good point. But the time delay happens if there's a report needed by staff and if they have to come to us for something that could have been easily dealt with. It's accelerated if there's no problems and if the director can say, oh, that's a valid reason, go for it. However, it's not really slowed down. It's just the status quo of coming to council otherwise. So it's not slowed down any further. It's just sped up if it happens to have a valid reason that meets the director of planning's approval. That makes.
I do understand the premise of it, and that is the ideal, and that's the goal of this. And I'm so on board, believe it or not. It's just, I do want to play the devil's advocate, because they're just like we've touched on before, there's lots of really good intention pieces that sometimes have these unintended consequences. And so that's why I bring those things up.
Counselor Beddoes.
Yes, unfortunately, it hasn't addressed my problem of the definition of a minor variance. And I guess I can use this instant tonight on Terra, where staff admitted that it would be a minor variance, so it would not even come to us. I wonder if those people that were the neighbors that were upset would have come to staff, or would they come to a meeting, which they did tonight. And fortunately, the applicant was here and they ironed it out right here. So it passed. So just that I'm speaking. No, I'm sorry. I have the floor. Tara, the one we did tonight with the variances, the setbacks. Okay. So that's what I'm saying is that maybe staff can answer this. If that was just did by staff, would the neighbors be notified?
Through the chair, yes. Absolutely.
Because my impression, they just got wind of this tonight and came over.
I believe they were on vacation.
Oh, okay.
That was the reason. But what we're actually doing in the procedures bylaw is expanding that notification area as well for development variance permits. Right now, it's just the adjacent properties. And we're looking to expand that to 100 meters, just like our rezoning applications.
I'm not happy with the variances when they deal with the property setbacks. A couple of centimeters fine, but when you're dealing with meters here, that's too much. Don't like it.
I think just to clarify that Terra Place development variance permit was approved unanimously as well.
Yeah, once we had the neighbors they were happy with it. Take it in context, starting to get annoyed.
Counselor Bateman.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of definitions here in the final two motions here. There are definitions of minor, and we do get to valid reason under number 3. And then the next section discusses the considerations in making a minor variance. So there's things like proximity and impact of the variance to neighboring properties, impacts to character and streetscape, physical or legal constraints, partial shape, topographical features, statutory right of way. So there's an awful lot of detail there that defines and directs staff as they consider whether it's minor. Though I do agree, I like the addition of public interest in this appendix, but pop in minor. Why don't we see what minor means? Have the reference.
Counselor St. Pierre.
I just wanted to respond to Councillor Beto's concerns around the setbacks. Most setbacks wouldn't come to us because staff can basically hold applicants to the setbacks as they exist. I somehow get the sense that there's a concern that, all of a sudden setbacks are just going to be up to whims, but, generally speaking, and I could ask staff about this, how often do you actually look at, like, how often do applicants actually want a setback change? And when would those things actually have a recommendation from staff, and how would that work? Because generally those staff recommendations will come to us. And if we have a staff recommendation, we generally go with the staff recommendation. I mean, that's the way it mostly works because there's been some good thinking put into it. And there's been correspondence and public's been notified and so on and so forth. I don't think that we're looking at a situation where all of a sudden all the building's going to be up against, because staff has that power. They still have to follow the rules.
Counselor McMahon.
I just have a question. How are you capturing like the matrix of success or not success with this?
Sorry, can you please ask that question in a different language?
Yeah. So through these amendments, ideally all those things come to fruition. That's great. But how are you measuring the success of these amendments?
Yeah, I guess through the chair, it's to be determined. I imagine we would be taking tracking, I suppose, our delegated approvals, and just potentially reporting back to council as well. That's also an option. Let's just see how these are working. But yeah, I guess it would be just taking reporting and logging essentially the DVPs that have been approved by delegated authority or the DPs, et cetera, and of course the policy, and potentially getting feedback from residents or the development community.
Yeah, that would be wonderful, because
Yeah.
then like if it is successful and all those pieces do work, then it's great to have those to showcase, to speak to like the naysayers who think that it's going a different direction. That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, what I can say regarding the delegated development permits, since they've been in place since 2018, I believe, developers certainly enjoy having that ability, not being able to go to council and being able to get a streamlined approved process. So the inclusion of development variance permits within that process to the minor degree as listed here are, is also a huge benefit to their timeline and bottom line.
Anything further? Okay, would somebody like to move something?
I have to read them all this time.
If the intention of council is to move the block, you can just move the block.
Appreciate.
Thank you.
I'll move the block.
We have a seconder, Councillor Bateman. Anything to motivate?
Guess I'll try and sum up some of the, just very quickly. Most of this has to do with actually following the recommendations that we received in terms of improving the development process and meeting the needs of the development community. They have been working with us on this, and that's been excellent. Council will still be brought in when there are issues. If there are problems, the development community knows that they can bring it to council, and they'll get their say, and they may get their variance or whatever else they are actually asking for. What this should do is actually reduce, again, our cost on staff time for the reports and speed everything up. And I'm sorry I'm not being particularly. I'm just too tired. Thanks. Please vote in favor.
Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I think this is one of the outcomes of this 2-year process that's got us to here. We're going to have this new bylaw 404, officer and delegation of authority bylaw, fees and charges bylaw, blasting regulation bylaw are all policies and plans to be updated as recommended through the DAPR report. So I think this is a great next step. And let's try it out.
Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, unfortunately, I will not be voting in favor of this. Not that there's just that one section that bothers me, but it's all moved as a block. So we at this council for the last term and this term were adamant that variances would come to council because it's dealing with the community and the people in our town. And I was okay with it till I found out that the staff has a different interpretation what a minor variance is. So I will not be supporting it. I think it's wrong.
Anything?
No, again, we're moving forward, and I guess we always have the ability within council to pull back if we find out that that things are not working. I have the words earlier. I'm going to vote with it, but I have reservations about the wording that's contained in there. And thank you, Councillor McMath, for pointing out things, because the exact word is that I picked up on that as well. Valid reason. And I'm concerned when things are ambiguous. I don't like that. So anyways.
And I'll be supporting it as well because again, the intent of this is to expedite the development approvals process. And I think that initially, at least, we need to trust that our staff has the ability to determine what constitutes a minor variance, and anything that is not a minor variance will still come to council. And so I think let's give it a shot and see what happens. So I'm going to call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Beddoes is opposed. Where are we? I think we're at the end of our
Council verbal reports.
Oh. Do we want to do that or let's postpone that till the next meeting? I know it's gonna sound like we've accomplished a lot when we actually get around to doing our verbal reports. One highlight each. Okay, so motion to adjourn. Do we have a seconder to? Okay, all in favor of adjournment? That's you
How
now.
many vote against adjournment? Please call the negative tonight.
Okay, Counselor Meadows is opposed to adjournment.